Welcome to the public meeting of the City School District of Albany Board of Education. If you would like to speak in public comment, now is the time to ensure that you have signed up on a sheet that's over there on the table where you picked up papers. If you haven't picked up papers, they're over there as well. We invite those of you who like to say the Pledge of Allegiance to stand with us as we say the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag In addition to saying the Pledge of Allegiance, we always focus our meeting by restating the mission of the City School District of Albany, which is to work in partnership with our diverse community to engage every learner in a robust educational program designed to provide the knowledge and skills necessary for success. Superintendent Adams, do you have a report for us?
Yes, we do have a report tonight. We received notification from the State Department of Education this week of additional positive trends in student achievement in our school district. Albany High School's graduation rate increased to 68% for the class of 2018. That's the fifth year in a row that the high school's graduation rate has increased. At 68%, Albany High is at the highest rate since the state started measuring graduation under its current methodology in 2005. I would like to commend Principal Jody Comerford and all of the school's administrators, teachers, and support staff. I would also like to recognize our students and families for the hard work and commitment that they have put forth so that Albany High is on a steady upward trajectory. I would also like to recognize Assistant Superintendent for Secondary Instruction, Lori McKenna, for her leadership in all of these efforts as well. You will hear more about the graduation data from Ms. McKenna later tonight. We held our annual district-wide spelling bee here at Hackett Middle School earlier this month, and it is my pleasure to congratulate Pine Hills Elementary School fifth grader Jonah Bouget as our 2019 spelling champion. He will represent our district at the Regional Spelling Bee at Proctor's Theater in Schenectady on February 13th. Jonah will be joined by Hackett's own Hannah Goldstein, our district runner-up, and two students who tied for third place, Isaac Allen of Myers Middle School and Alina Gasanova of Eagle Point Elementary School. Congratulations to all of this year's spelling champions, and good luck to our district representatives in Schenectady next month. I had the opportunity to join members of our community engagement team on home visits on a recent Saturday afternoon to support our early childhood literacy parent university programming. Kathy Edmondson and Tori Chappell were with me as we visited seven families to invite them to attend the January 15th program at Sheridan Preparatory Academy. I had the opportunity to talk with families about the early childhood literacy program and answer questions about other school-related topics that were on their minds. Our community engagement team does an excellent job sharing information about our parent university programs through its door-to-door outreach and other communication channels. It is part of our ongoing effort to nurture and strengthen our homeschool connections and partnerships with our families. Also, along the lines of nurturing and strengthening our partnerships, I am working with the board and our communications department to develop tools to keep our local elected officials up to date on the great things happening throughout our school district. We are developing a quarterly legislative update that will highlight good news and important developments. Our Director of Communications and Operations, Ron Lesko, will attend a meeting that we will have with our Common Council President, Corey Ellis, and others so that we may share some ideas. Those ideas will include signing up all of our council members for School News Notifier in categories specific to their wards. We're also looking forward to attending an upcoming Common Council caucus meeting to talk more with them about other communication initiatives. We are also looking forward to welcoming Senator Neil Breslin and Assembly members Pat Fahey and John McDonald to our March 21st board meeting to talk about this year's budget development process. Moving forward, we will continue to look for additional opportunities to include all of our city, county, and state elected representatives in these efforts. They are all important partners in our work, and we want to make sure that we are doing our part to get them the information that they need to be all in for Albany. I would now like to invite Hackett Middle School Principal Mike Polino to come to the microphone to tell us about the great things that are happening here at Hackett. And he has some assistants this evening. Joining him are 3 8th grade students, Amy Abuki, Georgia Hosea, and Shadiq Barry. Welcome, ladies, and Mr. Polino.
Andre, there we go. Again, good evening. I am honored to be here again today. Welcome to Hackett Middle School. I just saw most of you a few minutes ago. It is a little bit cooler in the cafeteria than it was in the library. But I am honored to be here tonight as the principal of Hackett Middle School alongside 3 of our very brightest young ladies in 8th grade. Sitting to my right is Miss Sadiq Barry. Sadiq is one of our 8th grade class representatives in student government. Also an active participant in our extended day program, which we'll talk today. To the middle is Miss Amy Aboki, who is our vice president of our student government. Also, I'm going to call you the captain of the modified basketball girls team, and also a member of our band program. And on the end is Miss Georgia Josiah, who is a member of our girls modified soccer team. All 3 of them are smarter than me, and they are always on the high honor roll and across the stage each quarter. So I am very honored to be with them tonight as we talk very quickly about all the great things that go on at Hackett Middle School. And with that, I am going to turn it over to Miss Aboki.
The Hackett Middle School mission statement states, "We celebrate the strength of our diversity and foster a learning community based upon mutual respect and supportive relationships to achieve our full potential as leaders, learners, and citizens."
Each morning, we have our morning announcements at Hackett Middle School, and here's our motto. I am somebody. I was somebody when I came. I will be a better somebody when I leave. I am powerful and I am strong. I deserve the education that I get here. I have things to do, people to impress, and places to go.
Hackett Middle School consists of 3 grades that include two different teams per grade. So it's grade 6 through 8th, and grade 6 includes about 148 students, while grade 7 is included of 248 students, while grade 8 is 258 students. Each of these grades are astounding in a way of totally different things, and they're all unique.
I'm going to go over just some of the quick demographics and leave all the highlights to our students. As you saw in our mission statement, one of the words that we really like to focus on is diversity. We love the diversity of what goes on at Hackett Middle School every day. And as you can see here, we try to break down the different ethnicities that make up our school. We feel that we are very well-rounded. At the end, we were thinking one of them was Sweden and one of them was England today, but our student with disabilities population currently in the building rests at about 18%, and our English as a new language is right around the 11 percentile range. The next slide has a lot of information. It's just my way of saying thank you to the Board of Education, because those are all the wonderful staff members that come to our building every day and make it great. I'm not going to go line by line to save us time tonight, but I just wanted to be able to present to you. Roughly, there's about 70 instructional teachers in the building, and then there's probably an additional 30 to 35 non-instructional staff members who provide support throughout the building. So we're a happy family of about 100 to 120 individuals every day. And when you add that to the 658 students, we're kind of a bustling building of about 800 individuals every day. As everybody knows, each school is responsible for their comprehensive education plan. Just wanted to highlight some of the things that we continue to do at Hackett Middle School that we feel make us a great school and things that we're trying to continue. The first thing that we do is we continue our daily walkthroughs of the building, trying to get into the classrooms as often as we can to observe teaching and to provide meaningful feedback to our students so that we are, to our teachers, so that we are providing our students with the best instructional practices that we can. As I showed you on the first screen, I feel one of the great assets of the building is the literacy coach, math coach, and data coach position that we have in our building. Hackett Middle School is truly a data-driven school, and we use that information that we feel to make the right decisions for our kids. And again, as you're aware, we're going to keep hitting on a little slide in a minute. Our student performance on our state tests continue to go up in both ELA and math, and I attribute that to the work of the coaches that we have in the building. We continue to work with Dr. Yvette Jackson and Carmen Jimenez. They provide various PDs to our teachers. If you've ever had the opportunity to participate in a PD with both of these women, it is truly outstanding. And we are going to continue our contract with them again. In fact, they're scheduled to be here next February the 6th. And then the last part is, and it's funny because I always tell these stories, my first year here, and it's been 10 years, if we can believe that. It's my 10th year. I know I'm getting old. We did something like 10,000 discipline referrals in a given year. We're not really over 1,000 as I speak to you right now, midway through the season or through the school year. And I attribute that to the work of one of our subcommittees, our RTI-B committee, B standing for behavior. It's now our Tier 2, Tier 3 committee, and we meet every Friday morning to talk about students, to look at various data trends, and to provide interventions and supports to our students. And we continue, like I said, to do that every Friday morning from 9 to 10. And if you like data, you're more than welcome to join us. But we feel that the conversations that we're having with our kids, and we've really improved on our check-in, check-out processes where we're kind of assigning a kid to an adult in the building to make sure their day starts well and ends well, is really having a positive impact on our school. All right, who's going to give the good news? Georgia.
So Hackett Middle School has had a really dramatic progression. So we were a school in need of improvement, and then we took a step back, but we took 2 steps forward, which means we covered all of that. Right now, we are a school in standing goal, meaning we're awesome. So, yeah.
At Hackett Middle School, we have a program called AVID, which stands for Advance via Individual Determination. Hackett Middle School, The program AVID is basically getting 6th to 8th grade students ready for college.
What's that?
We also have AVID binders, which help us organize our binder. It includes a table of contents. And it helps us keep organized. To the right is my binder, and to the left is Georgia binder.
That was only true a couple weeks ago. I've organized it. So we here at Hackett, we have the PBIS, which basically stands for, okay, I'm not going to bore you with the whole thing, but it basically means that somebody who does something good gets rewarded for it, because that's what we believe in here. So our first PBIS was a volleyball tournament, which was actually a really good game. And so the kids who didn't get referrals were able to come into the gym where we all sat together as a team, like both A side and B side, and we played a friendly but competitive game of volleyball. Well, we had 519 HMS kids, which is really, really good.
So here at Hackett Middle School, we have an extended day program which allows all students throughout the school to meet after school from 3:05 to 5:30, and we participate in many different programs that you may be interested in, including cooking club, jazz band, upstate gamers, and it allows people to interact with each other and learn something new each time they come. Oh, and in March, so there will be a Little Mermaid play that many students are participating in, and that is going to be an amazing play. So, yeah.
For Q1, 334 Hackett Middle School made honor roll. That is approximately 52% of the Hackett Middle School, which is the highest it's ever been.
On Saturday, January 12th, Hackett Middle School STEM Club competed in a competition called the Future City Competition, and in that competition, they won the best green roadway, which means they had one of the best robots in there. The STEM class is pretty cool though, so yeah.
And so around the time of Thanksgiving, teachers asked us to write what we're thankful for and what we're thankful in the school. And I personally wrote Ms. Hogan as one of my favorite teachers because she helps us to learn something new, but in a fun, interactive way, so that it is interesting for us and that we're able to understand it better.
Here are some things that some students say about Hackett Middle School. My classes are pretty fun here, and the teachers and other adults really care about us. Well, personally for me, I say I agree 100% with this person. The teachers are really awesome. They make sure they go above and beyond to make sure that you have all the understanding and more of everything that we're learning here. And sometimes they even make it fun, and it's just, you look forward to coming to school every day because of it. You never know what they're up to.
And another someone wrote was Hackett Middle School is a happy place to be, and my teachers help me with anything. And adding to that, I agree with this because like they have different learning styles, and like it helps different students in many different ways, so that not everybody would be like bored or they would like not understand anything, and they continue to break it down for everyone, no matter like how hard it is or how easy it is, and no matter the student.
Also, someone wrote, I am excited about coming to school because I can see my friends and teachers, and I get to learn things that will help me in the future. I personally love how the teachers are fair, honest, and are able to interact with us.
My turn. And somebody wrote, I am thankful for my principal because he is just not the rules enforcer. He is my friend. I have nothing else to add. And that is our presentation. We will take any questions you may have.
Thank you very, very much for your presentation. And girls, it was nice to meet you earlier and to hear your lovely remarks today. I don't know that we have any questions. Does anybody have one question that they want to ask?
No, I just have a question for Georgia. You said that you look forward to coming to school every day. I bet that wasn't true this morning, was it?
It was true.
My son wasn't very happy coming to school this morning.
Thank you all so very, very much.
That concludes the superintendent's report. Thank you very much.
So this is the time in our meeting that we set aside to hear from district residents, students, and other members of the public. We welcome community input about the decisions we're making, and in addition to accepting comments during public comment, we also accept comments by email, by phone, or by postal mail. While you're making your remarks, please keep in mind that by law, information about individual students and specific district staff cannot be shared. Every student and every staff member deserves to know that concerns about them will not be aired in public. Also, please keep in mind that public comment is not the best place to first alert the district to a concern you have. We appreciate it if you share concerns first with relevant staff, such as the teacher or principal. If you feel that concern is not addressed adequately, you may appeal to that person's supervisor up the chain of command, if necessary, to the superintendent, and decisions made by the superintendent can be appealed to the board. Finally, please note that the board generally does not respond during the public comment period. If you need a response, please consider contacting us by email, phone, or postal mail. When recognized by me, please state your name and city of residence. Statements are restricted to a maximum of 3 minutes, and Ms. Lang will give you a 1-minute notice and a 10-second notice, and I'll notify you if your time has expired. We have one person signed up. That's Ms. Ashley Chappell. Chapel. I'm sorry, Ashley. I do that every single time.
Good evening, I'm Ashley Chappell. I'm the instructional supervisor for health, phys ed, and athletics. I came to talk to you tonight to remind everyone that Albany School of Humanities has applied for a grant to receive fitness playground equipment as well as fitness equipment for phys ed, curriculum, and training. But the way that we can win is that everyone has to vote. So starting on Saturday, a link will be posted on Albany School of Humanities website through the district website, and you have to click on that link. Please share it with your family and friends. Vote every single day from every single email that you have. So the goal is that every single teacher, every single student, every single parent did it, we could win. We're 1 out of 50 schools competing. And so at least last year they said if at least 300 people voted a day, we could win. We have more than 300 people that could vote for this. It's not only a win for Ash, it's a win for Albany. It's a win for the school district because it'll be out in the community and behind Ash in their playground structure. So everyone will have access to it. And it'll also help us to continue our efforts to live a healthy lifestyle. So if you could all please go on every single day. If you want me to email or text you, I will do that because we really do need to win this, and it's something that we can truly do. So if you're on social media, follow the athletics page, AHS Falcons Nest, and I will send out the link every single day, 2 or 3 times a day. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Chappell. That brings us to the time in our meeting called routine consent. During this part of the meeting, we approve routine matters for the district. That usually includes things like contracts, field trips, hiring of personnel, and other similar matters. We vote on these as a group with no discussion, which allows us to use our meeting time more efficiently. Nonetheless, each Board of Education member has the option to set aside any routine consent item in order to require discussion and a separate vote on that item. With those words of explanation, I will now entertain a motion to adopt the routine consent agenda. Ms. Smith, seconded by Dr. Tour. Are there any set-asides? Seeing none, I'd like to call for the vote on the routine consent agenda. All in favor? That is unanimous. And that brings us to a little visit from the superintendent, I believe.
Thank you so very much. This has been a long-awaited position that a few months ago we heard about our advanced programs at the high school from Mrs. Bechtel, and we were moving forward very quickly with what are our plans to expand our IB program, our AP program, and while the university credit at the high school falls under a different individual, they're all about getting our students equitable access and providing those equitable opportunities and pathways to be prepared to take higher level courses so that our students are college and career ready. With that, we looked at the fact that we had an IB coordinator position that was .2, and we realized that that posed quite a few challenges for the demands on the position and looking at how to move this forward for all of our students. And I am so very excited to announce that we were able to expand that position to a full-time position. And we would like to announce that thank you very much for approving the appointment of Ms. Leah Evans, who is the IB AP coordinator at Albany High School. And at this time, I'd like for her to come forward and share a few words about her vision with regard to this position. So congratulations and welcome.
I'd like to say thank you very much initially, but good evening, Madam Superintendent and board members. I am excited to begin this very important work for the City School District of Albany. The IB AP coordinator position is critical to the growth, preservation, and development of the wonderful educational opportunities available at Albany High School. Having taught AP World History for the past 9 years at the City School District of Albany, it has presented me with a unique vantage point for our students. I know what is necessary for students to be successful in the robust and rigorous course offerings that the International Baccalaureate degree and advanced placement classes afford our students. It is the vision of the Albany City School District and myself to give all of our students the necessary tools to challenge and be academically successful at the rigorous coursework these classes will present. At my interview, I was able to outline my vision for an entry plan for the IB AP coordinator position. Our main goal will be to grow the IB and AP programs to include students who are representative of our student population. Every student should be equipped with the academic tools that are necessary to make the choice to enter into these rigorous programs. My entry plan focuses on 5 R's: readiness, recruiting, resiliency, retention, and reward. My first point is readiness. Building a comprehensive vertical alignment that enables students to feel prepared for success in rigorous coursework. This has to be established long before they come to the high school. This includes implementing an IB AP educational practice at the elementary and middle levels in a phased implementation process. While this plan has yet to be developed, please know that we are focused on building a pathway to access and opportunity within the IB and AP programs. The next point is recruiting. Building and sustaining the programs so there is equity for all of our students in Albany. This will include having a more comprehensive representation of our student body within the classes, building a community of learners within the program, educating current and prospective students, and parents, and stakeholders on the programs through a student-driven myth-busting campaign. We're still developing that idea. Resiliency and retention. This is really dealing with the social, emotional development of the students in order to support them as they navigate these classes. Students, in my experience, students who have been academically successful in IB and AP courses show a huge amount of academic resiliency. So, they need to have a growth mindset. This needs to start at the middle and elementary levels. Taking educational risks and challenges need to be a part of our district culture. Creating mentor and advisory programs where teachers can support students through challenges that these courses can pose for them, to work through those challenges and not give up, to continue to persist and persevere and be successful. And finally, reward. This all deals with intrinsic motivation, and that is the driving force of this reward. We will utilize colleges and universities along with current and previous AP and IB success stories that we have all seen throughout our district. This will help make students aware of the benefits to the program, linking both extrinsic value to the development of a college and career readiness student. I look forward to doing this work for our students. I'm passionate about this work and about our kids. I know that every single one of our students is capable of doing this work, and I truly believe that all of our students can reach success through these programs. Thank you.
Ms. Evans, on behalf of the board, I want to say thank you very much for accepting this position. We are very, very excited to see this grow. As many people who've been at board meetings for a long time know, the success of our college readiness program at Albany High is something we care deeply about, and seeing it done with the passion for equity that you've demonstrated right now really shows us that the vision of this board is really being implemented throughout the district, and we very, very much appreciate your accepting the job and that you were able to work out such a wonderful arrangement. So thank you so much.
And may I make a comment? Can I make a comment? A very quick comment.
I would appreciate if it's very quick. We have an
Super quick.
extremely long agenda.
Ms. Evans, you're a rock star, and
Thank
you know I have had kids go through in my home, go through the high school, and you have you're wonderful, and so thank you. Your vision is fantastic, and I wish you success.
Thank you. These kids are wonderful. And I think that's the bottom line, is that we need to continue to remember that the sky's the limit.
Thank you again.
Thank you.
I now get to turn the agenda over to Dr. Chatur as we move to the policy section of this agenda.
Madam President, members of the board, the policy committee brings forward 4 policies for action today. We discussed them last time, the last board meeting. 2 of them are very minor changes where we changed the wording to make them remove the gender-based wording that is in the policies. These include policy 9320 and 9500. The other 2 policies have been simplified from the currently adopted position, the currently adopted version, and any other individuals who might be notified by district staff and wrongful conduct is observed by staff has been included, so that and the section on whistleblower policy, the protection of whistleblowers has also been revised. So these are really minor changes. Do I have a motion to accept these policy changes?
Motion by Ms. Smith, seconded by Ms. Alexander Mann. All in favor? That is unanimous.
Thank you.
Excellent. The next topic is a more extended conversation about the Albany High graduation rate and the Albany City School District graduation rate. Superintendent Adams.
At this time, we have Ms. McKenna and Mr. Kent Baker, who will present to us about the Albany High School graduation rate information. We are so very excited, as stated in my report, that we are looking at, based on our August graduation rate results, we are at a 68%. And so we're very excited about that. And so I'll turn the time over to Ms. McKenna and Mr. Baker. Thank you.
Thank you. So as Superintendent Adams mentioned in her report, the New York State Education Department released the graduation rate data for the 2014 cohort, both for June and August, as well as the 5- and 6-year graduation rate. We are excited to share Albany's data tonight and showcase the upward trajectory of our graduation rate over the last 5 years. We know we can't stop here, and we know that we still have a lot more work to do, but we're up for the challenge, and we will stay the course. I want to publicly acknowledge and thank the high school leadership team, teachers, support staff, as well as central office for their commitment to our students, which has led to the increase in the graduation rate over the last several years. The increase in graduation rate is also a testament to the commitment of our students and families. We know that we need all stakeholders involved and committed to this work. We certainly can't do it alone. So just a few business rules that the State Education Department uses when calculating the graduation rate. The graduation rate is calculated for 2 different levels, both at the district and for the actual high school. The district graduation rate includes students who are placed out of the district at other placements outside of Albany High School. And then, of course, Albany High School's graduation rate is purely students who graduate from Albany High School. The cohort year is determined using the first date of entry into 9th grade. The 4-year August and the 5- and 6-year cohorts are cumulative, meaning that the 4-year August graduation rate includes both June and August. The 2014 total cohort consists of all students based on last enrollment record as of June 30th of 2018, with a first-time date of entry into grade 9 during the 2014-15 school year. Regardless of the cohort that students are reported in the school and district where they were last enrolled as of the reporting date, regardless of the cohort, students are reported in the school and the district where they were last enrolled as of the last reporting date for both for the 4 or 5 or 6 year graduation rate of first entry into 9th grade. And then the graduation rate is calculated using the number of graduates as of the indicated reporting date divided by the total cohort. And we'll get into the total cohort number as we look at the data more closely. And then the total 2014 graduation cohort data includes the 2014 total cohort for 4 years in June, 4 years in August, the 2013 total cohort 5-year June, and the 2012 total cohort 6-year June. All that data was just released. Turn it over to Kent.
Good evening. I just want to go through some of the details behind the rate that was just released. And if we first look, oh, I get it, thanks. Just looking at the distinction between the district and the high school, obviously they're made up of different ends, as Lori pointed out. The student groups themselves are different. The district N, or total cohort number, denominator will always be at least, if not larger, usually larger than the high school itself. And we are currently looking at our point of distinction being that 68%. And if you look at the absolute bottom right of that table, you'll see that's our 2014 August grad rate. It's important to note that for accountability purposes, the August rate is going to be one that really matters in terms of measuring where we are in regard to ESSA going forward. So this table just takes a look at some of the specific exits, and it breaks it down into terms of actual students. That rate is generated by taking that N, which is our total cohort enrollment, all the way to the left, dividing it by the number of graduates. And that graduate number is simply the combining of local diplomas and any of those versions of Regents diploma. It's unfortunate, but the IEP diploma and some of the more obvious ones to the right are not part of the graduate or graduation number or graduate number. I will also, though, point out that the OSEP or the GED, more commonly known as GED, students will lead to some value when it comes to calculating accountability in the future. And this table simply points out the differences between our June and our August numbers. I will, just for simple comparison, looking at raw numbers in 2017, we had 91 students, which is approximately 14% with Regents with distinction. And we have a little bit of a increase this year with 15%. That 101 represents a 15% number for students with advanced designation, so some upward trajectory there in terms of raw numbers. That 43% without distinction has held consistently. So this table just takes a look at those previous results broken down by our subgroups, and those subgroups with a star are the ones that are important for accountability purposes. There are many ways to look at the student population, but not all of them factor into some of the things that translate to accountability. Obviously, we care about all of our students equally, but some count more than others when it comes to measurement. You will notice that there are some cases where there are relatively small n sizes, and of course that leads to dramatic swings in some cases when it comes to percentages on a year-to-year basis, and that becomes a little more clear when we look at percentages. This second slide is simply the same information just for Albany High School. I'm sorry, the prior one was for the district as a whole, and we now look at Albany High School. So here's a quick look at 4-year trend in terms of the rate. And I've taken the June and August rates for each of the prior 4 years. And you can see some, even on the table, some noticeable increases. First and foremost, our all students group, we're up 4% year over year. and then a 2% jump from June to August. That's pretty consistent. Our black student group is up 5% year over year, with the similar 2% growth from June to August. Hispanic students up an incredible 15% year over year, and a 4% jump from June to August. And again, this is where you'll see some of those smaller end sizes for the subgroups play out, with swings in terms of the percentage changes. And it's unfortunate that they seem to be the smaller groups that led to some of our dips this year. So we had ultimately 7 out of 9 subgroups really report or show growth. But for our L population, our multiracial population, very small n sizes and somewhat of a dip in those two areas. The other thing you may notice is the downward trajectory in our white student group, and we currently do not have a working theory, at least I do not, in terms of how that has occurred, but maybe more to follow. This first slide takes the previous information and just puts it into more graphical format. It's a little easier to note that pretty consistent upward trajectory over the past 4 years. I've also overlaid the state trend line on top to give you a sense of where we are in relation to the rest of the state with these subgroups again. And there are 7 of 9, as I pointed out before, that show growth. And in some cases, you'll see our subgroups are really right in line with the state averages, which is impressive. The next slide is same information, just showing you the August movement. And again, those same consistent trends in about a 2% overall kind of increase, and that mirrors what it's proportional to the state increase as well, meaning our summer programs, all other things being equal, are consistently effective as the rest of state.
So as we just shared with you, we had 661 students who were part of that 2014 graduation cohort. However, not all 661 students graduated within 4 years. So this slide really just shares with you what has happened to the rest, or where the rest of the 2014 cohort is. So out of the 661 students in the 2014 cohort, 14% of the district and 13% of Albany High School students were still enrolled as of June of 2018. This number decreased in August, which means that 2% more of the students graduated after completing summer school in August and passed additional Regents exams that they needed to pass in order to graduate. 1% of the students transferred to another program, leading to a GED. And then the 18% of the cohort is in a category of what we call dropped out. But this doesn't necessarily mean that they dropped out, but it could mean that they left school without having documentation. And so according to the state data dictionary guidelines, we have to code them as leaving school without documentation, which then correlates to a non-completer or a dropout. So this data, as stated earlier, is on a positive trajectory. We have increased our June and August graduation rates at the district by 7% from the 2012 cohort to the 2014 cohort, and 6% at the school level. Lots more work to do, but there's certainly reason for celebration. So we know that some students need more time to meet the graduation requirements beyond the traditional 4 years of high school. What we can see from this data is that giving students more time in high school is allowing more students to graduate, which is a great thing. These 5- and 6-year graduation rates have also increased over the last 3 cohorts. It is also important to note that under ESSA, that the June 5- and 6-year graduation rates can be used in the event that the 4-year August graduation rate is below the 67%. So it's really important for us as a district and as a school to ensure that we are encouraging students to remain in school to meet the graduation requirements, and for us to get them to graduate, even if it takes them a little more time than the traditional 4-year student. Like I said, we have more work to do, and we certainly have many initiatives in place to increase the graduation rate. This certainly isn't an exhaustive list, but these are some of the initiatives that are in place. Monitoring data is a huge piece of the work that we have to do each and every day, and it's not done alone. We have response intervention teams in each of the academies that are monitoring individual students per academy. There are common planning times built into teachers' schedules where they are monitoring students' progress in the classroom and ensuring that they are successful in the courses that they are taking, leading to Regents exams. The academy principals know their students intimately. They know every single one of them. And they are carefully monitoring the students as soon as they enter ninth grade, ensuring that they have the 5.5 credits after the completion of ninth grade, because we all know that the research shows that if a student is successful in ninth grade, they are more likely to graduate within the 4 years. School counselors are working tirelessly to ensure that students are meeting the graduation requirements, and all this is being done through the monitoring of data and through the support of the data dashboard that Kent's office has created. We have options for students. We know that not all students can be successful in a large comprehensive high school, such as Albany High School. So we have an alternative, alternative placements for students, such as Tony Clement, which allows students who need a smaller environment to be successful. If they need to accelerate the rate in which they gain credits. And we also have our Albany International Center for our English language learners, and night school for students who are over age but under credit, and we can accelerate them through night school. We also have a great initiative during Regents time. It's called Saturate the Streets, and we have our support staff at the high school, including our homeschool coordinators, who go out and saturate the streets and find those kids who need to be at school in order to take the Regents exams, and they bring them into school, and we make sure that they're seated for those Regents exams. There's academic supports for students in place. There's mentoring. We have extended learning time opportunities, summer school, Regents review classes, after-school tutoring, and also senior assemblies 3 times a year where the academy principals, the assistant academy principals, and school counselors are reviewing the data with the seniors in order to get them across the stage in June or August. Questions?
Board colleagues, as usual, I ask you to prioritize your questions and figure out which is your very, very most important question, because I have a feeling we're probably only going to go around once on this unless there's a great movement to go farther, because we do have a very extensive agenda tonight. We knew going into this meeting that it would be a long one, and we hadn't really planned to talk about graduation rate tonight, so it's a really, really long one. So who would like to go first? Ms. Krejci. And I like the way your name tag matches your name now. It's lovely.
Thank you. I just had a pretty quick question, and it was just about the senior assemblies, because I'm having a hard time picturing how you could do that kind of personalized, getting kids what they need to cross the stage in such a large group. Can you tell me more about that?
Yeah, so this is, the senior assemblies is really an opportunity for students to get together in an academy setting, and the academy principals and the principal talk about what they need to do to stay on track for graduation, and then it's followed up with the school counselors meeting with students, the seniors individually.
Okay, thanks. Who's next? Ms. Lang.
So after the good news of Hackett and now the great news with this is great. So I just want to talk about the initiatives to increase graduation rate, and I was wondering where family engagement kind of fits in on that with some of the initiatives.
Yeah, that's certainly an important component, and I think that all of these initiatives have that family component included and built in. For example, the RTI teams, if a student is struggling to meet graduation requirements, the RTI team is reaching out to those families for support and putting supports in place for those students. So it's everything that you see here, there's a family component. So options for students, for example, if a student is recommended to attend Tony Clement, the family is engaged in that conversation. Intakes are, parents are participants in the intake process where individual plans, success plans are developed in concert with the family. So certainly families are a huge part of each one of these, and there's communication along the way with families to let them know where their students are in relationship to meeting the graduation requirements.
Anyone else? Ms. Alexander-Mann?
The initiative that you mentioned, Saturate the Streets, to get kids to come in for regions, could that be expanded to try to identify students that may be at risk of dropping out?
Absolutely, and those conversations are really with the school counselors and the academy principals. The Saturate the Streets is really about if a student isn't showing up for a Regents exam, they go out, they saturate the streets, they sweep the kids up, they go to their homes, and they bring them in to ensure that they're sitting for the Regents exams. But this monitoring the data is a critical piece of that, and so when school counselors are meeting with students, when academy principals are meeting with students, they're reviewing the data with each of the students, and that's where the options for students come in. So if we recognize that a student may be low on credits for graduation, we may recommend, when I say we, the academy principal or the school counselor may recommend night school, for example, because we can accelerate credit there.
Anyone else? I have one little thing I just wanted to say, which is I really appreciate the fact that you talked about the 6-year graduation rate. I understand how important accountability is, but what's really important to me is kids. And the kids are graduated in 6 years. They get that same success from having graduated. And I spent some time with this data over the last couple of days, and many things spoke to me about the data, but two that I want to draw your attention to. For years, I've looked at two individual gaps: the white-black achievement gap in terms of high school graduation rate, and the economic challenge versus non-economic challenge. This year, for the very first time, there is zero difference between the 6-year rate for economically challenged and non-economically challenged students. I find that amazing. That is tremendous credit to the work of the Albany City School District and all the work you do, and I really appreciate it. Also, this year, our black-white achievement gap, the difference between graduation rates is as low as it's ever been since I've been starting tracking. It's either 13% at the 4-year rate or 8% at the 6-year rate. Again, a real credit to Albany that we are focusing on equity and that's making a difference. So I really appreciate your continued focus on those kids. And I don't really care whether they count for accountability because their lives count and it counts for them to be high school graduates. So I really, truly appreciate it. Over the course of time, the last 4 cohorts, we've basically seen 10% of our kids graduate in August who had not, graduate after the 6th year who hadn't in the 4th year. So if that holds true, if you guys could really move 10% more kids, that would bring us to 78% of our kids leaving high school with a diploma, which would be astonishing. So sorry to spill the data, but I really love the numbers because they really speak to me about the fact that our changes are not anecdotal. They're systemic. They're making difference for lots of kids every day. So thank you guys for letting me talk a little bit about the data because I can't help myself. Anybody else have anything to throw out there? Thank you very much for the report and for all of the hard work that led to it. And somewhere around here I have an agenda. That brings us to the calendar. Lori's like, I get to leave.
So while Ms. Bechtel is coming to the microphone, Ms. Bechtel leads our calendar committee, and she will share with you tonight and present for discussion the 2019-2020 calendar. After the discussion about the 2019-2020 calendar, we would like to share the business rules that apply to developing the calendar in order to establish the district's priorities as we move forward with developing future calendars on an annual basis. We would like to make sure that we open this discussion because we absolutely welcome your feedback regarding the possible priorities for calendar setting. We know that this discussion has been going on for a period of time, but I think we're at the the place and the space where we can crystallize some of those business rules and set a course where these would be our guidelines moving forward. And so Mr. Petrin will also share in this presentation with regard to our calendars. So thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Petrin is the co-chair of the calendar committee. She does all the work. So I'm very pleased to offer a draft calendar for consideration for the 2019-2020 school year. In preparation for the vote, which I anticipate taking place in February at our next meeting, you will have the creative coordinator version, the staff and family version that we did last year. This is just a draft document, a working document. We were able to look at a couple of priorities that we've had for the last few years, one of which was to have a teacher professional development day prior to student attendance, and that would be in addition to the professional development day that is for teacher preparation, where teachers are in their rooms and getting ready for kids, but then in addition to that, having some training time. We were also able to pay attention to the safety and security concern and schedule professional development days for the November election and then for the school board vote on May the 19th. So really that is it. At this point, we would be happy to answer any questions that you have about the calendar. I've talked about the process the last time I was here. The committee has met several times this year about calendar, and this was the collaborative calendar that was developed to put forward to the board.
Thank you very much. Board colleagues, as always, prioritize one at a time. Who'd like to go first? Ms. Krejci?
It feels like looking at I just want to confirm where we are and where we've been as far as the days at the beginning of the year. We're going from one convocation PD between Labor Day and the first day of school. Do we typically have one, or do we typically have two and we're moving to three?
I don't think that there is a typical construct. It really ends up depending each year about how the calendar begins in the beginning of September. I don't, typical it would be an unusual word. So what we have here is the convocation day on the 3rd, and then the afternoon, generally teachers are back in their buildings probably for just a couple of hours, and where staff would have like a true faculty meeting to get ready for the business of school. The pink day is representative of the teacher preparation day when teachers are in their classrooms and working. And then we're fortunate enough that this year we can have on the 5th a day of training before students come back. And that was an important priority for the committee.
If I might interject with that, one of the things that we heard in getting ready for students and making sure that academically, the professional development that we have been working with teachers, that they are ready and on a cohesive page, that we heard from administrators and teachers, is that last year they did not have that day before students were able to arrive. So it presented a challenge for building administrators to pull their teams together to set that course at the beginning of their school year. And we heard that from not just administrators, but we heard that from teachers and support staff alike.
Ms. Lang, then Dr. Chatur.
So I know that the primary day for next year is on June 23rd. The decision was to have that school day open.
Yes, the primary days seem to have very, very low attendance, so we did not consider that as a day that we would close. In addition, it falls in Regents Week, and so no, it did not come up as a part of the discussion.
And the days prior to those Mondays, remind me again how the attendance was on those days, having school on Monday and then no school on Tuesday?
Which month are you speaking of?
The other two.
In November.
November Monday before and the May budget. I know I'd asked how the attendance was on those Mondays.
I did not look specifically for attendance on those days. I can, but I believe that we have actually looked at that in the past and did not have significant absences over other days.
Dr. Shore?
Do we have to have the students on September 6th? Reason why I ask is because if you just start on the 9th, then parents can plan for that whole week, whether they're on vacation or what have you. You're sort of bringing them on Friday, then they're off for the whole weekend, then they're coming on Monday. Just start on Monday and keep instruction continuous if it's possible.
We would have to make that day something, and then we would have to take away from somewhere else in order to meet the days in the year. The one thing that's nice about that day is that we will be able to, we'll do our freshman day at the high school on that Friday, so the rest of the high school actually won't begin until that following Monday for that continuous piece that you're looking for. But K-8, we will begin on that Friday.
Anyone else? I'm going to raise again, which I know you answered a little bit in writing, but I'm still struggling with the 2 half days at the end of the year. It is such a burden on families, and I realize that it seems to work out better because it allows us to maintain our consistency between our elementary, and secondary teaching staff in terms of instructional days. I just wonder if there's a way to pursue that to allow for that differential. And to let the elementary students be there all day on Thursday and not at all on Friday, or even early dismissal day, which counts for instruction, and not on Friday or something, so that we can get that inconvenience, because it is a considerable problem for elementary parents because they have to provide 2 days of childcare.
So yes, we did actually have extensive conversation about that, and looked at that. It isn't really, it's really almost more about the contractual requirement to have 182 contact days with students for as a part of our APSTA contract. More, I think, that than the inconsistency. The worry would be, I suppose, if that we ran into a year that we had, like a year that we had a couple of years ago, where there were all those extra snow days because we just got clobbered in, I think in March with snow days, and then you could potentially put yourself in a position where the high school and the middle schools wouldn't have a day to make up, but the elementary would. But I suppose in that case, you would make that day the makeup day. But having said that, I have discussed at length with the committee and with the superintendent, and we do want to explore how that might look beyond this year. We haven't really had the opportunity to speak to the principals about the impact on their buildings. And I mean, I reached out to a few principals to find out what specifically was happening in their buildings. But I think we need to do a little more extensive conversations with the principals to determine how they're using those half days and how it could work differently. And so we have some ideas that we're thinking about for not for 1920 because I think we're here, but certainly over the next several months to look for the future.
Anyone else with a first question before I see Ms. Lang is ready for a second question? Ms. Lang?
I know that last time I asked about a second parent-teacher conference, and I was wondering how that conversation went.
So we are allowed to have 4 superintendent conference days. In our district, we do one for the convocation day, we have 2 PD days, and we have 1 parent-teacher conference day. One of the things that I had thought about, and we have talked about at the committee level, is having them be half days and then do one in the fall and one in the spring. But I have heard very clearly from the board that that's not a construct that you know how challenging it is for parents to have half days. And everyone says that. Even people on the committee are saying that with children in other districts, and they say, oh, I hate it when they have half days. It's very, very difficult to figure it out. If we chose to do that, we would have to give up one of our professional development days, and that is something that I think that we would have to talk with the superintendent at length about that piece.
Dr. Chitori, did you have something?
So if, again, going back to the September 6th thing, if you got rid of September 6th and added half days to the, change the other half days at the end of the semester to full days, will that still work?
No, because
you're dropping one contact day?
yes, the way I don't know if anybody had an opportunity to play with that crazy spreadsheet that BOCES sent us. If you take students out of the day, then it is just not a contact day. It's a 0. Even if you came to school for 2.5 hours or 3 hours, that does count as a student contact day. So it really has advantaged, I think that whole rule advantaged districts who have suffered with a lot of early dismissals and late arrivals because of impact on snow across the state. We don't, here in the city, don't seem to have quite that same issue. So it benefits those folks. But early, we could look at early dismissals, maybe not full half days, but I think that still speaks to the inconvenience to families on that, with those kinds of constructs.
And I'm just going to add the last piece of that is that for many families end up with a child in middle and a child in elementary, and it's part of the inconvenience is the fact that you've got 2 different schedules happening on that same day, right? Because that Friday is Thursday is really the big problem because your middle schooler is in school and your elementary one is not in school all day. If you have it the other way around, it's not really a big problem because you've got an 8-year-old and a 13-year-old or a 14-year-old at home. That's not a big problem. You can work with that, but you can't have your 8-year-old at home. Anyone else on the calendar? Because the next time we see this calendar, it will be up for adoption. So while we can discuss it in 2 weeks, and we will certainly take input from the community, who I hope is out there looking at this, this is the meat of our discussion on this. If there's anything else, now would be the time. Did you want to talk about the priorities document as well, or do you want to? Yes, you do. Okay.
At this time, Ms. Bechtel will go ahead and we'll start talking about the priorities. This year, there were several things that, from conversations earlier about, even when we talk about religious holidays, et cetera, this year's calendar was not impacted by that. And so, in a sense, we're able to get ahead of next year's planning as we look at priorities for developing our calendar and a more systemic way of doing business with regard to our calendars. And so Ms. Bechtel will go through what some of the discussion is around those business rules and where those priorities may need to rest. And then we welcome the input from the board as we take that information back to the committee for further discussion about the priorities.
So this memo is a revision of the memo that has guided the calendar committee for some time, and it is more robust and lends more clarity to how this works. So the beginning is just why the calendar committee is established, and then the parameters, which I've spoken to before, which is the BOCES calendar, our labor contracts. I've included the State Education Department rules and the actual language at the bottom of page 1, which speaks about the 180 mandated days and sort of the end of school and when kids can come to school, which is not in July and August, although conference days can occur at that time. And then on the back of it, our snow days, which has remained the same. We schedule 3 and then back them off as we have snow days. And the conference days, those 4 days that we are allowed by state ed. But C is really the discussion item, the calendar setting priorities. And we listed here that we will always prioritize the BOCES calendar for a variety of reasons. We want to maximize consistency of instructional days for students and families. We want to minimize impact on our out-of-district student placements and inconsistencies in attendance days for all of our stakeholders. we have spoken at length about really the need, if possible, it isn't always possible, to have a full professional development day prior to student attendance in the beginning of the year. A lot gets done on that day. We would like to avoid professional development days at the very end of the year, that April, May, and June, because people are, we're at the end. We need to sort of try to front load those things. Safety and security is a big concern for the group, so we have prioritized the election days. And finally, if there are discretionary days left, then the committee will come to consensus using all of these guidelines. The NYSED, the required numbers of days, the labor contracts, and our federal and state holidays.
Do we want to entertain questions about that now?
I just have one.
Ms. Lang.
How many parents were on the committee?
There is no parents on the calendar committee.
Yeah, one of the things that I had asked the superintendent for, I know she was going to get out to us, was a list of all the members of the committee so that people could understand the structure of that. And I know that was on your list, so I'm sure we'll get to that. One question I had was about the adhering to the BOCES calendar. When we last talked about this, I thought that you had said that the preference was to adhere to the BOCES calendar, particularly for the week-long breaks, but not so much emphasis on it for the 1 days. Was that my understanding?
Yes, primarily, we do try to pay attention to that. Generally, for example, this year, BOCES has an extended Christmas break. They'll be off 2 full weeks right through January 2nd. But because we have chosen to put the 2 Jewish religious holidays that occur in September and October, we wouldn't be able to do that. We would have to come back to school on that 2nd of January.
Ms. Alexander-Mann?
Is there room, or where would the place be to look at data? We talked about. Excuse me. I'm sorry. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
I had asked about Eid and how many children show up or miss school, and we knew that there were quite a lot. I think there were like 200 students that had missed. And I know that my colleague Anna, Ms. Savage, had talked about it would be great if we could kind of define some of these days off. And so where in this process would we be able to do that?
Well, I believe we now have a board member that it will be sitting on our calendar committee, so that would be an avenue to talk about how the board wants us to settle the calendar. I would also say that ultimately the board has to approve this calendar. We are offering you our best, the committee's best option for a calendar. If the board has some different desire, then it is in your purview to approve this calendar.
We also,
Mrs. Adams.
we also need to, so I would chime in with, while I agree with Ms. Bechtel, and absolutely it is completely the board's responsibility to adopt a calendar, whether it's the one that we present or one that you provide suggestions to and then we make changes to. What you have in terms of the priorities that we're discussing, especially when you go to letter F of that memo, these are things we have to do. We have to do those. And so religious holidays, other than anything that's listed here, would fall under discretionary days. And we have to make sure that we have X number of days of instruction for our students. And then the more we start to needle into what we're looking at. So for example, let's say that if Election Day becomes a state holiday, then that in essence gives us a day back. You see what I mean?
I do.
So there are other things that can impact that may or may not be in place right now. And so when we talk about the will of the board, we still have to look at what are the, and that's why I really focus on letter F, because those are clear cut. These are things that we have to do. And so anything outside of that, we could work with that. However, we have to make sure that it does not prohibit us from meeting the state education department guidelines, the number of required instructional days, items that we have already negotiated in our contracts, and then any federal and state holidays that we may have. So where does that discussion happen? It would happen in the realm of any discretionary days that may exist outside of that we have to do. I don't know if that answers the question or not.
It does, and I think that I just want to figure out if we're taking holidays off for one faith, that we're also recognizing other faiths, and it would be great if we could be more, if it could maybe be driven by data and discussion.
I'm going to let Ms. Krejci speak next, if that's okay. But I mean, I certainly second what you're saying because it's something I've been saying all along. One other thing I'm just going to just poke in because, Ellen, I know you're waiting patiently. I want to make sure everybody understands, especially in the audience, that one of the things that constrains us is that the way the structure is, we are required to not start school in August, and we are required to end school on the last day of the Regents. So it's not just a matter of, oh, we can add a holiday and go one day later in the year. That is not an option. We can't add a holiday and start one day earlier. We are not allowed to start before the beginning of September, and it's a real problem. Ellen?
And I want to jump in before the other comments I had and say, and we're also not allowed to hold school in federal holidays, unlike other states. I just wanted to comment on the language of the committee. Under A, I'd really like to see, rather than just saying that there's a committee, I would like to see whatever the designated makeup of the committee is, like to say the committee is going to have representatives from HR, from the cabinet, from the board, and from each of the bargaining units. And I agree. I think Ms. Lang read my mind because I would really like to see parent or community representation, parent and or community representation on this committee, not with a goal to making it a committee of 30 people, but I think at least one parent on that committee is really key. Second, when we look at that letter C, subsection F, to me that seemed kind of redundant because you're talking about discretionary days after you've already looked at the NYSED attendance guidelines, the required number of instructional days, the negotiated agreements, and federal and state holidays. I think if I could my impression as a member of the committee was more that the discretionary days that were remaining to figure out after you've applied these 4 required things is the consensus of the committee, keeping in mind their the consensus of the committee, keeping in mind the committee's constituents or their stakeholders. It was a more accurate representation of what that discussion was. Maybe something to say, talking about staff needs. I know some staff were saying we'd like the schedule to be similar to the schedule in the district I live in so that I can be home at the same day as my kids are home, that kind of thing. Whether it's staff needs or just committee consensus, that would be a more accurate way of discussing discretionary days. I'd also like to kind of put a plug in for if there are specific days that specific bargaining units always want to have off, that would be really a good thing to nail down in future contracts.
Yeah, actually, I'm going to add to that. I would like the calendar committee to, and maybe we need a specific charge for the calendar committee because I think year to year the charge of the calendar committee has been to figure out the calendar, right? That's been the charge of the committee. But I actually wonder if the charge is actually a little broader than that, which is to figure out what the impediments are to the best possible calendar and then talk about how we could start breaking down some of those impediments. So is the impediment something that needs legislative change? And so we should have the calendar committee speaking to the government affairs committee and saying, hey, let's put this as a priority for next year, that we want this relief from the calendar structure because it would allow us to educate our students more effectively if we were not constrained by this particular state law? Or is one of the impediments something about the structure of the calendar of the contracts that we would want to make sure that we brought into the negotiations with contracts? So I'm thinking about looking at the calendar committee, not having the calendar committee feel that they are only to work within the constraints, but they are to identify the constraints and help us start to figure out how we can break some of those down. Anyone else on calendar? Ms. Lund?
I really want to clarify the bullet about election days, and it says no election day. Primary day is an election day. We have, so please, I mean, I know I said this last time, but please make an exception to that. And there are, during the presidential election, we will have thousands of people in that building. And so I still do not understand the thought process. We have very little people come into our buildings for the May vote. I know more buildings are accessible to people since we run those out of our schools. But 2,000 people versus 20,000 people. So I'd like that clearly defined if that is what we are doing. So that is one of my points. I'm very concerned about the September 6th start date. I do not know that I would vote on a calendar that starts that day. I'm going to have to mull that over. And that is family reasons, and our families for that reason. I'm a little concerned about some of those Mondays before as well, and being creative to move some of those days. I'm also very concerned about having 2 Jewish religious holidays. It's not in their contract. If the teachers really needed those days, and that was something that should have been bargained, in my opinion, in the contracts. That's why we have the contracts. So I'm going to have to mull over all of this. Also, there were no parents on the committee, and this is something we've been talking about for at least the last year. So I don't know where my vote stands at this point. So I just wanted to make that clear and for the record.
Dr. Chatur.
So I agree with what most of my colleagues have said. What I would also like to see happen in the future is we plan not just for the year ahead, but 2 years ahead, so that, you know, when you're looking at these priorities, yes, like I mean, we talked about Eid, it's not being impacted in next year's calendar because it falls on a holiday anyways, or when school is not in session. But it'd be nice to see the following year, if it does, that we have accepted and we have considered that, and we've made a place for it. So it's good for everyone to see that, yes, these priorities are consistently being applied and we're looking forward. And I think it'd be helpful to do 2 years calendars, you know, so we nail it down for this year, but the year after as well.
If I could speak to that, we would not be able to approve the second year. We could absolutely put together a draft just for kind of a visual to see where we might be. We could speculate when region exams might be, but it would absolutely be a draft. We wouldn't be able to approve it, but it could give you an idea as to what that second year might look like. And we could kind of guesstimate when BOCES might do that, but there are other things that would be a little bit more consistent on the calendar that we could absolutely create a draft to share that information.
You couldn't have said it better. That's exactly what I was asking for. Perfect one for next year and a draft for the year after.
Ladies and gentlemen, I see Tabitha has her hand up and Ms. Smith has her hand up, and we have spent considerably more time on this than we had originally intended to, because we did have a fairly extensive discussion about the priorities last time, and I'm sure we'll be continuing to discuss priorities. Ms. Wilson? Ms. Smith?
Thank you again, and I just want to state that I more or less see the perspective of my colleagues also on many of the matters that they addressed. But I thought that parents would be part of the committee, but even if you're going to consider that moving forward, an inherent sort of benefit of that is they can sort of feed us information also about student attendance. So there'll be sort of byproducts that come out of having parents there that I think will be valuable.
Thank you. I just wanted to echo what Dr. Chatur said about just the planning and the planning in advance. I think that's absolutely what has to be done. But and especially with regard to other faith holidays. But I think, and I may be the only person that doesn't have difficulty for the most part with the calendar. And I think it's just because that school is school, you know. I'm sorry. If I'm going to take a vacation, which I have only done once, where my daughter didn't start school on that Friday, that Thursday or Friday, I've only done it once, and I feel like, well, that's a choice that I will make as a family. But generally, this is the calendar. This is what it is. I understand the difficulty that we and the challenges we face by statutory challenges, primarily, and other federal holidays and things like that. This is difficult, and so I respect every single family's schedule. I know, and it's not that it was easy for me either, as largely a single mom trying to. Okay, I've got to be at work at a certain point in time. How do I get my daughter here? Oh my gosh, she's got a doctor appointment. What am I going to do for here? Oh my God, there's another half day. But we figured it out, and I think that that's what we all do. And I did that for 12 years. And I'll, if I had another child, I'd keep doing it for 12 more years. So again, I don't want to, I just don't want to, disrespect any family's situations. But I don't know how we can please everyone. But I do want to, encourage the committee to think ahead of time, ahead of schedule. We should now be thinking about next year. We should now be thinking about the second year, and so forth, at least for those things that we want to try to have control over. So that's all that I wanted to add. Thank you.
I'm going to give Ellen the privilege of the last remark, as she has had a board member on the calendar committee, and I hope my board colleagues can accept that this will be the last remark on this topic tonight.
It's just a really quick update. Since the calendar committee met, we had scheduled the primary day as a school day, but at that time the primaries in upstate New York didn't start until noon. They've since been changed to start at 6 a.m. So now that they're the full day, that may impact our choice.
This is, however, not a presidential primary, so it's probably not going to be. Actually, is the presidential primary moved? Because the presidential primary is not always the same day as the state primary. I think that one may be in September, but we should figure that out. Okay, moving on. Thank you, Matt and Karen, very much. Moving on to the topic of middle school enrollment, another difficult topic for tonight.
So we're bringing to you tonight another discussion item, just for you to start thinking about some of the challenges. Several months ago, our board made the decision to address our middle school enrollment concerns with the reconfiguration of our middle school by approving the redesign of North Albany Academy into a 650-seat middle school. As we move forward with the middle school configuration, we would like to share with you a few challenges that we are currently facing with our projected 2019-2020 enrollment at the middle school level. Ms. McKenna will now begin the discussion by defining the problem and presenting some options for consideration. Just know that this is a first blush look at options. It doesn't mean that these are the only ones. There may be a hybrid of several combinations, but we wanted to make sure that we came forward to start discussing what some of these concerns might be. And again, this presentation is just to start this discussion about some of the possible options to address our middle school enrollment challenges that we're facing in the very near future. Ms. McKenna?
Good evening again. So as Ms. Adams indicated, tonight I would like to discuss enrollment at Edmond O'Neill, the challenges that we are facing with space, and present some solutions for discussion tonight. So the way Edmond O'Neill is currently being used to deliver program, we are up against some real challenges because we do not have the physical space to accommodate 2 teams at the 6th grade level, 7th grade level, and the 8th grade level as we originally had projected we would do. So for the 18-19 school year, we currently have 2 teams of 6th grade, so approximately 152 students, 2 teams of 7th grade, and 1 team of 8th grade, and then 4 sections or 4 classrooms of self-contained special education students, giving us a total of 462 students. In the 1920 school year, it was always anticipated that we would have 2 teams of 6th, 2 teams of 7th, and then those 2 teams of 7th that are currently in place right now would roll up to 2 teams of 8th grade. And then, of course, our 4 classrooms of self-contained special education students, giving us 6 total teams for approximately 537 students. So to put this in perspective, there are currently 44 classrooms for 54 full-time teachers and 6 part-time teachers. And there are currently 9 teachers sharing a classroom. If we add another 8th grade team, this number will increase since we will need an additional 8 classrooms. Classrooms that we simply do not have if we increase the number of teachers sharing classroom spaces. So it will force us, 1, to have more teachers share classrooms, and 2, it could also force us, depending on how the master schedule is created, to have teachers share a classroom during the same period. It's also worth noting that this year we converted a computer lab to make room for a 6th grade English enrichment class. The faculty lounge was turned into a workspace for the traveling teachers because they needed workspace when they weren't teaching. And there just simply isn't enough space in that faculty lounge that was converted to add more traveling teachers in that space. The copy room on the 2nd and 3rd floor were made into offices, and both copy machines that were in those 2nd floor copy rooms are now in the workspace where the traveling teachers are located. In addition, we created a mental health clinic, which requires 2 office spaces. With our current enrollment, we have taken full advantage of the spaces we have available to us, and adding another team is just simply causing some difficulty in identifying classrooms that we simply don't have. So that's really the problem that we're up against. So we met as a small subgroup of cabinet, Mr. Hogan, Cecily, myself, Karen, and Ms. Adams, to think about some options for consideration and for discussion. So option A would be to have Arbor Hill and North Albany keep their current 5th graders and roll them up to 6th grade for the 2019 school year and until our new middle school opens. This would allow Edmond O'Neill to have 1 team of 6th, 2 teams of 7th, and then 2 teams of 8th for the 19-20 school year. Excuse me. So this option, you can see by the chart, we would have approximately 100 students on the 6th grade team, 152 students for 2 teams of 7th grade, so approximately 76 students per team, and 147 students for 2 teams of 8th graders, and approximately 74 students on those teams, for a total of 446 students enrolled at Edmond O'Neill for the 1920 school year. Some pros of that, or some highlights, it would reduce enrollment by approximately 100 students, allowing for another section of 8th grade. And it would, like I said, allow us to have space for the 2 teams of 8th grade that we need rolling up into 7th. We also recognize that it would be a shift back to 6th grade in 2 of our elementary schools. And we would need to add another, I don't want to call it a con or a disadvantage, but we would need to add staff for a 2nd team of 8th grade, which would cost approximately $773,000. And that number is important to keep in mind when we look at another option. So option B is a combination where we would keep our current 5th graders at Arbor Hill and North Albany in those 2 schools for grade 6 for the 1920 school year. We would have 1 team of 6th grade, 1.5 teams of 7th grade, and 1.5 teams of 8th grade in 1920. So the advantage of doing this model is 1, it would reduce the enrollment at Edmond O'Neill by 100 students by keeping 6th grade students at Arbor Hill and North Albany. And it would also allow us to look at efficiency and staffing because there would be no need to add additional staff for a second team. If you look at the chart up here, if we had 152 seventh graders and we had 1.5 teams, it would be approximately 100 students per team. And same thing for eighth grade, which is really about 20 students when you look at per period in the core areas. So 20 students in the English class, 20 students in math, science, social studies. And then again, the downside of this is, again, shifting sixth grade back to the two elementary schools when the real goal is to have all sixth graders experience a true middle school experience. Option C for consideration or discussion is really a hybrid or a combination of A and B, but would not include a team of sixth grade at Edmond O'Neill. We would create a sixth grade class and have all sixth graders from the 4 feeder elementary schools into Edmond O'Neill attend North Albany. So we would almost have like a sixth grade academy at North Albany. Again, the advantage of doing this is that we would have a reduction in the enrollment at Edmond O'Neill by 200 students, and we could focus on just one grade level, sixth grade, in this sixth grade academy at Edmond O'Neill. The downside of this would be that we would be adding another transition for students from elementary to North Albany and then to Edmond O'Neill. And then it would also displace students at North Albany. So in order for this option to work, we would need to expedite the phasing out of North Albany pre-K through 4 students in order to make space in that building for the 200 sixth graders that we would place there. And so students in grades pre-K through 4 would return to their home school, and we would look at Arbor Hill Elementary School as the home school for students originally zoned for North Albany. Impact on the budget. We know that there will be impact. In option A, we would need to add an additional 9.6 teachers to accommodate an entire team, which is approximately $773,000. In option B, we would utilize current staff to accommodate the 1.5 teams of 7th and the 1.5 teams of 8th, resulting in no budget impact for option B. Option C, if we go with the 2-team structure for 7th and 8th grade, we would need to hire an additional team, as we indicated in option A, and we would reallocate the 6th grade staff over to North Albany for the 2 teams of 6th grade that I mentioned just a few minutes ago. So also important to keep in mind as we're thinking about some possible solutions. For options A and B, from a construction perspective, April of 2021 through August of 2022, construction begins at both Arbor Hill and North Albany. Arbor Hill will have renovations, where North Albany will have site work and additions. North Albany could stay full of students through the 2021-22 school year. In the 22-23 school year, we would collapse pre-K through 5 to Arbor Hill and only leave AIC at North Albany. In the fall of 2023, North Albany would become the 3rd 650 student middle school. And then thinking about modifications for option C, in 2019-20, we could collapse pre-K through 5 to Arbor Hill, as I mentioned in the last slide, and then North Albany would hold 200 sixth graders and 150 AIC students. And then in the 22-23 school year, we could collapse AIC over to O'Neill, and then we would have the space for the to move students around over at North Albany for the site work and the additions. AIC could move to O'Neill earlier because the last class of O'Neill will graduate in 2021 instead of 2022. But it's really important as we think about these options that we keep in mind the construction at North Albany and the impact that the enrollment will have on the ability to get the renovations completed and the site work completed in order to become that third middle school in the fall of 2023.
So at this time, we would welcome comments because, as you can see, it is a challenge, and we are not presenting a recommendation at this time because this is a larger discussion that we really need to make sure that we explore thoroughly because there are some significant challenges that we need to really discuss thoroughly and make sure that we're considering everything in any recommendation that would come forward.
So, board colleagues, I'd like to recommend that we structure our conversation in the following ways. That first, we ask clarifying questions to make sure we understand this presentation. This is the first time we've been exposed to this in a setting. We've seen the paperwork prior, but not had a chance to ask questions. So I'd like to make this first chunk of questions be truly questions about understanding what was just presented. I'm going to propose that after that, we then have a set of questions about other ideas we have. Other ideas. Have you considered this? Have you thought about that? I am going to ask that under no circumstances do people comment at this time on what they like or don't like about any of these presentations. It's way too early for that. We don't know what all the options are, and we do not wish to be in a position where we've said, I really don't like this, and then ultimately come to find out that given all of the other possibilities, well, okay, it wasn't that as terrible as I had at first thought. So let's try and not comment, but let's use this first set of questions, if you are all willing to follow my lead on this, to ask questions for understanding about the presentation, and then we will move to other ideas. Ms. Krejci.
I have a question that I don't necessarily need an answer to right now, but just in general. And it's a question about the team teaching model generally, because in my years on the board, I don't think we've ever been actually given an explanation of what middle school team teaching means. And I only, other than my dim recollections of having been in middle school, I don't understand. I think if we as a board are given the charge to evaluate whether we should have single grade level teams, or it looks like this option B is a split team with 7th and 8th graders on it, I would need to know more about the team teaching model generally to know are there pros and cons to having that split team, etc.
Yeah, so the teams at each of our middle schools, we have, based on the number of students, we have students on teams. So at Hackett and Myers, for example, they have one team of 6th grade, and they have one team of teachers teaching on that team. 7th grade, they have 2 teams of teachers, so team A, team B, and then students are divided up on between those 2 teams, and the same thing for 8th grade, team A, team B. So it's not about team teaching in the sense where you would have 2 teachers in a classroom co-teaching or team teaching. It's about putting students on a team with a team of teachers. So on team A, there's an ELA, math, science, social studies teacher, and all the students on team A would have those same teachers for those core subjects. The difference in having a split team isn't about the students as much as it is about the teachers and their assignments. So if you have a teacher who has a grade 7 and grade 8 team, 3 of their periods could be teaching 7th grade English, and 2 of their periods could be teaching 8th grade. But we wouldn't have a mix of 7th and 8th grade students in an English class.
Right, that's kind of went along with my understanding of what I thought they were. So I was saying, are there pros and cons to that system? In other words, if you would be asking us to choose between A and B when A costs $700,000 more, I would want to know that there were significant detriments to having a split grade team in order to put forth the extra money to not do that.
There are not significant detrimental impacts on having a split team.
Ms. Wilson.
I missed, and I have a real question, but I missed when you said you had 54 teachers and how many part-time?
9.
Sharing. I apologize. Thank you. So my question was similar to Ms. Krejci's in the sense that I was trying to figure out if, because what I gather in option A versus B is this also a smaller class size from what I can gather.
Yes, so in option A, if we went with the 2-team model in grades 7 and 8, the class sizes would be approximately 76 and 74 students. And if you each teacher, core teacher, so ELA, Math, Science, Social Studies, teaches 5 sections. So if you divided that 75 by the 5, the class size would be pretty small. 15 students, yep. Versus 20. So there's not a significant difference.
So I just want to make sure I understood this because this is a really important point. Option A results in class sizes around 15 at Edmond O'Neill.
Yes.
Options B and C are more like 20?
So option B would be about 20 students. And then option C, depending on the teaming structure, would be 15 or 20.
But at our other middle schools, the class sizes
are a little bit larger than that.
Higher than 20. So
Yes.
even 20 is a smaller class size than what we're doing at Myers or
Yes.
Hackett on average. Okay. Ms. Lang.
So I was wondering if you could talk about, I know that if we go back to the 6th grade where we're, as one of the cons, if you could kind of talk to me about the structures that have been put in place for Toast, Ash, Giffen at the 6th grade, and how that would then be modeled if we revert back to those schools, and how the resources there with the added 6th grade supports.
So I'm going to defer to Dr. Wilson Turner on that one. The difference right now, from my perspective, would be that health would be offered at the elementary level like it currently is being offered in the 4 schools that currently have 6th grade. But I believe they do team or departmentalize.
Yes, they do departmentalize at 5th grade usually in elementary school, so we would departmentalize in 6th grade, the same supports that we provide. As far as our instructional supervisors from the secondary level will come down and work with our principals and those teachers so that they are using the same curriculum and instructional strategies that are being used in the other elementary 6th grades and middle school 6th grades for that matter. Does that answer the question?
Are there other questions of understanding about what was presented tonight? Dr. Chator and then Ms. Alexander-Mann.
So I'm trying to understand the constraints at Edmond O'Neill other than the student numbers. You said you need space for copy machines, you need space for teacher planning between classes, and something else. Health room maybe?
I think the critical issue, if I can rephrase it for Lori, is that because if we were to continue with the current enrollment pattern, it would be a much larger 6th grade. They need 8 classrooms for student instruction versus what they have now. Ms. Alexander-Mann, did you have something?
I think I answered my own question.
Okay. Ms. Lang?
And then how did the numbers roll out for that 6th grade cohort next year to go to 7th grade?
So the 1920 6th grade cohort would then roll up into Edmond O'Neill for 7th grade. So the numbers are pretty similar to what 7th grade would look like. Correct. It's about 200 6th graders.
Okay, so now I think it's time to move on to the what if questions. What did you consider doing this or doing that? If people have questions of that nature, let's start with Ms. Wilson, then Dr.
What I'm trying to gather from the critical difference between B and C is that it appears in B students would stay in their home school, like transition from fifth to sixth. But in C, it appears that there may be a not a double transition, but almost like you graduated from fifth to sixth, and then suddenly sixth to going to another school. And I was wondering about the difference between also for those students in the C option, would be they be coming potentially from other neighboring schools.
In option B, the students who are currently at Arbor Hill and North Albany would remain in those two schools for sixth grade. And then for seventh grade, they would transition over to Edmund O'Neill for seventh and eighth grade.
That would be exactly parallel to what we're doing at Hackett and Myers right now, right? One
Yes.
team at 6, 2 teams at 7, 2 teams at 8. Some kids enter at 6, some kids enter at 7.
Correct.
Dr. Chatur?
Did that answer your question?
Absolutely for B, and I was curious about C, where I see, oh my gosh, where basically there's a sixth grade class being expanded. So those will still be fifth graders from that school and potentially other schools too.
Yeah, so in option C, if we did the 200 students over at North Albany of sixth graders, it would be the 4 elementary schools, so SASPA, Arbor Hill, and North Albany, at North Albany for sixth grade. And then those students would transfer or transition over to O'Neill for seventh and eighth. So it's another transition in that model.
Ms. Smith? Oh, I'm sorry, Dr. Chatur. I forgot about you in the transition there. Dr. Chatur, then Ms. Smith.
So there's room between those two buildings at Edmund O'Neill, right? A small patch of land between the pool building and the actual classroom building. Have we thought about putting a trailer there which can be used for administrative purposes, and now you take the administrative rooms and make them into classrooms?
I don't believe there's enough space to put.
I'm going to tag on to that because my question was related to that, which was, have we explored other buildings in the immediate neighborhood? For example, the mental health clinic, which is occupying 2 classrooms. Have we explored? We'd have to come up with more than 2 spaces to materialize out of thin air. So I know that that doesn't solve the whole problem, but is there any space in the community center? Is there any space in a building adjacent to the community center? I don't know what's around there, and have we explored those? This would only be, in my mind, would be for non-instructional space, so it would not be subject to the kinds of state aid requirements.
Yeah, so the 2 offices that you're referencing is for the school-based mental health clinic that we've recently established at Edmund O'Neill as a result of the needs assessment that we've completed for that building. It would not help us in finding those 8 additional classrooms that we need.
You mean because it's only 2 classrooms?
It's only 2 offices.
Well, I believe you said 2 classrooms were converted to make that space. No? Did I misunderstand?
No, you're thinking, so the copy rooms were converted for office space for traveling teachers.
I understood that, but the mental health clinic, what was that space that's currently the mental health clinic, which is new, before?
So there's a student support suite, and we've just reallocated where office spaces are located.
Ms. Smith?
And I just had a question about, have we looked at the impact of transportation on these transitions? And we will, though, presumably.
We have not, but we will.
Yeah.
Are the self-contained classrooms at Edmund O'Neill in full-size classrooms?
No.
Ms. Alexander-Mann?
Option C sets up a feeder pattern already.
No feeder patterns that came as a result of this emergency situation would be something that would have. We are going to go through a full, broad-based community process in developing our permanent feeder plan.
Right.
Just like the one that is currently feeding Edmund O'Neill has always been perceived as a temporary feeder pattern.
Right.
Anything we should do now would always be temporary. We will go through a full community process to establish a feeder pattern.
Thank you, and I needed that clarification, and I think that also helps the public who may be listening in, so.
Ms. Lang?
Have we spoken to the principals at the two schools if they stay in the 6th grade, and how do they feel that the community or the families, have any of those conversations happened?
Yes, so they are here tonight, and Dr. Wilson Turner has spoken to both principals. And Dr. Wilson Turner, do you want to answer that question?
Yes, Ms. McKenna. Both principals, the families love their elementary school, and so for the most part, families would appreciate being able to stay there. However, both principals are also aware that the understanding that North Albany is destined to now be a middle school is impacting the enrollment at North Albany. And so both principals have been very thoughtful about the fact if we have to move quickly, or more faster than we thought, that they would rather have that transition happen quickly for their K through 4 students instead of having that drag of enrollment over the next couple of years. So they have had the opportunity to kind of weigh some of these options, and as Lori indicated, are here this evening so they can receive additional information.
Can you just repeat that? So for the most part, they think they would be favorable of their families staying in 6th grade?
They have not had an opportunity to formally survey their families. However, in a focus group with North Albany families last week, they indicated that they'd love to be able to stay another year with their schools, but there are of course families who would prefer their child to do 6th grade in the middle school. So without a formal survey of parents to say exactly what they would want, that would be the statement.
Thank you. I just want to make sure.
Ms. Krejci? I wondered if we had given any consideration to moving some of the self-contained classrooms, if the classrooms that are currently housing the self-contained classrooms are of the appropriate size and type that they could house 6th graders.
So I think that would be a challenge. We were really careful when, a couple years ago, when we looked at the self-contained programs and the continuum of services that we offer our students with disabilities, and we aligned the strands in each of our middle schools. So it would be difficult to move our autistic strand out of the building, or 2 out of the 4 classrooms out of the building into another building. Our other 2 middle schools have 5 to 6 self-contained special education classes as well, and it would be difficult to add additional classrooms over there. And more concerning to me than shifting is really adding transitions to our students with disabilities.
Just still trying to figure out options. Has there been any consideration to providing opportunities for students who would prefer to transfer to Hackett and Myers to try and control the enrollment at O'Neill through selected open enrollment options at Myers and Hackett?
Yes, that's always an option, and we have looked at that. The challenge is that even at Hackett and Myers, in certain grade levels, the enrollment is really high, which then increases the class size in the, exactly. So we have looked at that.
Mrs. Adams, were you hoping to say something a minute ago and I didn't catch you right at the right time? She doesn't remember. That's okay. I'm mostly stalling for time because we're all hoping something good is going to come to us. Does anyone have anything else they want to talk about this? This is obviously the beginning of a longer conversation, but it is a conversation that's going to have to move very rapidly because children and families need to know early in 2019 if we're going to be changing enrollment for September of 2019. Anyone else at this time? Agenda Setting Committee will try and keep this front and center in our decision-making process about what is on the agenda coming forward. All right. What's next?
Thank you
Thank
so
you very
very much.
much.
We appreciate the discussion and feedback. Thank you.
That brings us to the bill portion of the meeting. We will do middle school facilities project followed by the budget presentation.
Good evening. I'm joined by Rich Peckham of CS Arch, and you're going to see a presentation about the potential capital project, middle school project at the North Albany School, and it also has implications for the Arbor Hill Elementary School as well. Just for clarification, there's no middle school activity at Arbor Hill. It just is we would be putting more students in Arbor Hill, so there are some renovations necessary at the elementary level for Arbor Hill. So with that, I will turn it over to Mr. Peckham to present some information. Also, I'd like to add, yesterday we revised the presentation, and I sent an email out to everyone with additional information that summarized some of the changes.
Thank you, Mr. Hogan. Before I start, I just want to mention that Larry Toon and John Hunt from Turner Construction are also here tonight. They were working on that, and Larry will be the Scott DePhillips of this project, so that's his position. So starting with the middle school, I just wanted to start by bringing people back to the planning we had done that was part of the feasibility study, and then talk about some of the ways we've enhanced and modified the plan since then. When we did the feasibility study, we had some of the key things. We had a new auditorium constructed in this location on the first floor, and we were using the existing media center, still as a media center, reconfiguring some of the space and taking over and using space in the YMCA for some classroom space. On the second floor, we were keeping the existing cafeteria where it is and having to build a new kitchen, because as we know, it's just a serving kitchen at North Albany Academy right now. And for a middle school, we need a full cooking kitchen to be able to accommodate the students. So this was going to be an addition. It was going to create some complication because it doesn't have direct access to the exterior. Any deliveries have to come in and come through this corridor to get there. Built a couple tech rooms here between the school and the YMCA. And then I'll just back up. On the second and third floor, we were connecting across where the bridge is right now to add classroom space there to get enough classrooms. So as we develop the plans, we look at them and say what's working, what's not working, what could be done better. So 4 areas in main things I'm going to talk about how we're proposing to change the plans that then got us to the estimates that Turner has completed. I'm going to look at where the cafeteria is, where the music spaces are, where the library is, and where the auditorium is are the main changes that we'll be looking at. So what we did, this is an overall site plan just so we can show where the additions are in a little more relationship. So there'll be an addition in this location on the south end of the site, connecting the 2 wings of the building. And in this plan, this accommodates the cafeteria and classroom space in that addition. The other addition we're talking about doing is the space between the school and the YMCA on the, I'll call it the uphill side, create the auditorium in that location. And when we look at the floor plans, I'll show you some of the reasons why we felt that this was an improved plan. Starting with the first floor, the cafeteria and the kitchen would be located in this area. That gives grade level access to the kitchen, so for deliveries and everything, they can have direct access into the kitchen. They don't have to access from a parking lot and then down a corridor that the students will be using to get in there. So that's the one change we made in this plan. The other change is, and we'll look at it more when we get to the second floor, we're proposing that the existing library becomes music space. And that'll make a little more sense when we look at where the auditorium is and where the media center can become in the building on the second floor. First floor of the YMCA will have, we're looking at putting the technology education classes there and the family and consumer science classes, things that students normally travel to anyway that aren't directly part of the teaming of the classes because they go across all the grade levels. The other thing that came up that we need to look at and thinking about is that the branch of the Albany Public Library will still be in the YMCA building. So how do we keep the patrons of the YMCA and the security the school needs separate? So we'll be looking at a direct exterior access, which isn't really shown on this plan, for the library. We're also going to put in a couple toilet rooms so that we're not sharing the library staff and patrons with the school toilet rooms. So they'll be able to maintain the library just in this area, and the school will be able to use the main entrance and the lobby and the connection that that provides. On the second floor, this is where we'll connect across between the two buildings. Right now, there's just the bridge connecting the front part and the back part of the building. The second floor here, we'll rebuild that with the classrooms here. Some of these are over top of where the kitchen will be. And then we'll build the auditorium in between the school and the YMCA. And that provides a couple things. It provides a direct access from the parking lot that's in the back of the auditorium for that. It also provides the ability for, if I just back up a slide, entrance. This is where the big YMCA parking lot is here now. We can enter in here and then just go up this stair to the auditorium, and there's an elevator in the school here for anybody that needs that to be able to go up to the auditorium. It'll keep all of your, if you want to think about it, all your evening after-hour functions with the auditorium, the pool, the gymnasium, all on that side of the building. You'll be able to shut down the school side and close that off for security purposes. And then when we get to the third floor, we're building more classrooms across this bridge, similar to the feasibility study. And this is the upper area of the auditorium. We're showing a balcony in the auditorium for some added seating capacity. Future slide, I'll talk specifically about the seating capacity. And there's obviously costs associated with that balcony. We would have the option, if we wanted to design the structure without the balcony and be able to design it in a way that it could be constructed in the future if it really felt there was a need to be able to do that. And it probably wouldn't add significantly to the cost of the project now to be able to have that capability in the future, because we'd need to really just make sure we had columns and foundations sufficient to be able to support the rest of the work. So this is the slide talking about the auditorium. So if we just go with the single floor auditorium, there'll be about 580 seats in the auditorium. If we add the balcony, there'd be another 160 for a total potential of 740 seats in the auditorium. Just as a comparison, Hackett has about 790 seats with its balcony, and Myers has about 650 seats. So without the balcony, it'd be a little smaller than Myers and Hackett. With the balcony, it would be in between the two. The additional cost for the balcony, when we factor everything in the lobby outside the balcony, is approximately $1.42 million. One of the things about auditoriums in the funding system for New York State, auditoriums get very little state aid associated with constructing them. So although it would cost the district over $1.4 million to build it, you'd only get a little over $320,000 support from the state to build that. So the amount we'd have to take from the Capital Reserve Fund, because we're always trying to balance this project so that it's paid for either from state aid or from money that's already in the bank in the Capital Reserve Fund for the district, so we don't end up with any new tax impacts for this project to the community. Would be about 1.1 million of that $15 million Capital Reserve Fund that the district currently has. So that talks about the auditorium. So what about the base project? The estimated costs of the whole project for the middle school work, including the projected purchase price of the YMCA, is $27.7 million. Of that, we estimate state aid paying for $16.7 million and about $11 million of Capital Reserve Fund expenditures to complete that work. And then the balcony, you can see the numbers there add up there, and it just means you're taking about $12.1 million from the Capital Reserve to build the balcony. Moving over to Arbor Hill, where we've talked about to expand that school to be able to accommodate more students, we need to create some additional classroom space there. When we did the feasibility study, we were looking at a 4-classroom addition in this location on both the first and second floors. As we've looked at it more, we feel we can do it without those additions. And I'll talk a little bit about one of the changes we've made to be able to do that. So one of the main reasons we eliminated the addition was in our preliminary discussions with state ed, it became clear that across the whole district, you have enough physical space in the district to accommodate the elementary school students. So they would not be inclined to aid additional classrooms there. So we didn't want to spend more money totally paid for by the school district to accommodate those classrooms. Just looking at the current enrollment and the combining of Arbor Hill and North Albany Academy, just talking about the K through 5 enrollment, at Arbor Hill it's 357, or no, its total enrollment is 357, 65 of that's pre-K, 292 K through 5. North Albany Academy would be 291 total, 34 pre-K and 257 K through 5. And the combined would be about 550 K through 5, which if we go to 4D school, that would translate to 22.3 students average class size. I realized actually that the average class size would actually be a little lower than that, because what needs to be subtracted from that 549 are the students that are in the self-contained special ed classrooms, because they are in the total population, but they wouldn't contribute to that 4D student enrollment. The other thing that we did, because of, we can go 4 deep at K through 5 without doing addition, but we only end up with 4 pre-K classrooms, which is how many they have at Arbor Hill now. Pre-K, from my understanding, is something you can allocate across the district depending on where classroom space is available, so we wouldn't address additional classrooms at Arbor Hill for pre-K. So in this plan, you can see really what we're doing is we're renovating the areas that were not renovated when we did the major project there, the areas that are currently the science kit storage area, district central copy, some other district storage, food service offices in this area on the first floor. This area where there's a pre-K classroom in here now that was moved into space when you need to expand pre-K, but that space was not renovated in the other project either, so we would renovate that. And we would renovate up on the second floor where there's again some space that was not previously renovated, is currently just used for miscellaneous storage. Overall, at Arbor Hill, we're estimating the cost of these renovations at about $5 million. In this case, the state will pay about $4 million of it, so about 20% of it will be paid for from the Capital Reserve Fund. So just kind of doing a combined budget between North Albany Academy and Arbor Hill Elementary. If you just look at the total project without the balcony, you're about 32.7 for the total project costs. 12 of that from Capital Reserve and 20.7 from state aid funding. And you can just see the numbers. If you add in the balcony, it takes about the Capital Reserve funding up to 13.1 million. And we just have to remember that the other part of this bond referendum that's been discussed is the 5-year plan items for renovations of other buildings. So anything, any Capital Reserve Fund money necessary for that needs to come out of the total 15 million. So with only, if we were to spend the 13.1 on these two projects, it just leaves less for that project. And I believe that was the last slide.
It's a very interesting and challenging meeting tonight. Lots of hard decisions and lots of thinking. Board colleagues, I'm sure we'll have a lot of questions. Who would like to go first? Dr. Chatur. Dr. Chatur, I'm sorry, I'm not on my top of my game tonight.
So I'm looking at the design of the auditorium. So that's in the space between North Albany and YMCA, right? And if you remember, it's sort of on a slope, and you have it facing crosswise, facing the YMCA. What if you're change it 90 degrees. So now it's either that the stage is going to be either by that back wall towards the hill or towards the road. Would you, and if you actually extended your footprint to the edge of where the YMCA is, or slightly more, you have like 3 rows of 12 seats, 36 in a row, right? And you have 4 or 5 rows in the balcony that you're proposing. You could probably fit at least half, if not more, of those along ways. So you'd have a longer, it wouldn't be a square, it would be more like a rectangle. Right. You may lose some of the access road that currently exists behind the building, but again, if you dig out some of those, if you can, you could be creative, I think, there. But instead of facing towards the Y, you face either towards the road or towards the back of the building, and you might be able to fit more people by adding more rows. You could go up to the edge of the Y building, or
Yeah.
towards the road.
I mean, we could look at that. Our designers that looked at it, I think they had that option. And a couple of the things we have to look at is how we get people into it and how we get access to the stage and where that relates to the lobby and the circulation space. So if you turn this, I understand what you're saying, you turn this, and we do have to watch that drive there, obviously, from
Right.
behind the
Yep,
behind
yep.
the Y.
Yep.
But yeah, I see what you're saying. If we extended it
Right.
that way,
Right.
Because presumably that's less expensive than building a balcony,
Right.
right?
it's actually, it may not, well, it would be, yes, because we would not then have to build the thing that would save would not so much the balcony, but this additional lobby space on the third floor.
Because you wouldn't be going vertical, you'd be going lateral.
I mean, we can take a quick look at that and see how many seats we would get if we did that, and what other configurations we'd have to do to get the stage. But you're right, in that configuration, we would want the what's going on? We'd want the stage at the backside here. So we would still you'd need to be able to get the people to the stage and people here. I mean, we'll look at it.
Yeah, I think that would be great if you could come back with that when you're ready. Ms. Wilson?
Along the same lines and kind of looking at the same image, the Google Maps image, I was curious when you were presenting about that negative space next to the yellow classroom and cafe, and it appears to be in the center, like, parking lot. So we wouldn't utilize that at all?
No, if you look at it, what we have is at the first floor, you'd still drive underneath there. The classroom addition only goes across the second and third floor. So you basically drive underneath there, and that's actually where you would drive underneath for deliveries for the kitchen.
Understood. Thank you.
Anyone else? The only other question I had was understanding the relationship between the libraries. In the plan as drawn, would there be a school library and a public library?
Yes, there's the branch of the Albany Public Library that's in the YMCA, and that is separate from
Okay.
the school.
Because at some point, somebody in my area speaking around me, but I didn't get a chance to ask them, had said something about a shared library, but that's not what you're proposing. You're proposing two separate
No,
libraries. We have ours, they have theirs, they're just in the same building.
We're not proposing that. I know that we did some of the library renovations in Albany when we're dealing with the public library there, and had those discussions, because like at Pine Hills, it would have been a very natural thing with the library right next door. But one of the biggest things, two things came up that made it seem not feasible. The limited filtering that the public library puts on their computers, and then there was even union staffing issues. Were the
Yeah,
two
I don't
big
actually
things
see how it
that
would be
were-
feasible, so I'm glad that that's not what's proposed. So that's helpful to clarify that. And then just one more question about the balcony. If ultimately we decide that the orientation, I'm sure your designers thought through the other idea, and if they ultimately come back and say, no, that doesn't work, we got to go to the balcony idea, and we decided to omit the balcony for purposes of saving funds, and then we later wanted to add it. Is that like a one summer construction thing, or is it longer than that? And I'm asking because we still don't really know what our middle school enrollment's going to be. So I'm kind of asking, can we turn on a dime and add that, between June and September if we saw our enrollment increasing?
I think that I could turn to my Turner people to input, but my guess is that level of insertion is probably not a 3-month job. It's probably at least 6 to 8 months to be able to do that.
Okay, so any other questions or comments from the board? So, Bill, help us understand sort of the next steps. What do we need to do next, and what do you guys need from us in what time frame?
Well, the 5-year facility plan and this are interdependent only because we have a fixed capital reserve of 15 million. We had been planning on 3 million of that to go to the 5-year facilities plan, which will generate about $15 million of construction with state aid. We could easily spend 22 to 25 million on all the other district buildings just in general stuff. So we are actually prioritizing and making reductions to try to even get it down to 15. So in terms of next, and we'll be bringing you that plan on Valentine's Day. So something to look forward to. So I guess just to have some sense of the 5-year facilities plan, when we see you next, it would really need to have to be targeted toward 9 to 10 million if in fact you thought you wanted to proceed with the balcony here versus more like 15 million if we and I know part of this answer will depend on can the architects reconfigure and try to squeak out another 40 or 60 seats.
Right, I think the question on the table, if we were to do the alternative configuration, the idea would be that it would cost us not a whole lot more than the non-balcony option and get us a few more seats, right? That's the idea. Whether it turns out to be true or not, I don't know. But I don't think that has a lot of bearing on the yes balcony, no balcony decision. Right now, I mean, I think we don't have to make a final vote. We can always come back on this. But in order to give Bill sufficient guidance to come to us with a 5-year facilities plan that is the right amount of stuff in it, he does really need that guidance. So unlike before where I asked people to specifically not comment whether they like something or not, I'm going to ask everybody in as few words as they can to say, given what you know now, would you lean towards the no balcony approach, which is less expensive, or the balcony approach, which is a larger number of seats? And maybe before we do that, we could just get a couple words about program use of the auditorium and how that would change, impact the usability of that auditorium, because that's really the question, right? Is would this school suffer considerably from having a smaller auditorium? I'm looking over there towards the cabinet table, and they're studiously not looking at me.
I will. I'll take that one, and then they can chime in. We talked about this, and one of the things that would happen, it really results in how often would we really need to try and facilitate a whole school assembly. Schools can work with grade levels if we're able to fit at least a grade level in, because then you can target those assemblies per grade level. And so functionality, I think I would have to ask Ms. McKenna at this level, how often and how necessary is it to truly have a full-blown assembly with every student, or could we facilitate those needs through grade level assemblies?
So there are times during the school year that there are full school-wide assemblies, and I wouldn't want to eliminate that as an option for our principals to have full school-wide assemblies. I would also be concerned about having evening events where parents attend functions at school, and even if we had one parent per student attend, we wouldn't even have the space to do that.
So if you look at assemblies that we do here at Hackett, and then when we look at performances that are done here, typically it is standing room only. Most of the seats are filled. So that is something to consider.
It's notable at Myers also, which is quite a bit smaller auditorium. I have been, when I've been in the concerts, thinking, I wonder if we need to start moving to Albany High for the middle school concerts, because Myers is definitely standing room only and there's not sufficient parking. It's starting to become a significant problem at Myers. Okay, so in that case, I think, Bill, we're going to have a really hard time answering this question without the answer, because the answer is we want our cake and we want to eat it too. So we want Mr. Peckham to be able to spin the auditorium and come back with an auditorium that's at least as large as the one at Myers, which would be 70 more seats, which would be, I don't know how many seats were in a row?
36 in a row.
36 in a row, two more
Three
rows,
rows, two to three rows.
2 to 3 more rows of seats in that same, and I don't think we need to worry too much about the drive. I mean, there's a little bit of, we can reorganize the driveway to make room behind at roughly this same cost. Is there any hope of that happening? Because I think that is a strong preference of, I'm looking for nods. Do I see nods? Right, everybody says yes, that's what we want. Whether it's possible or not, we don't know. But if that can be done, then you could comfortably come to us with the 5-year facilities plan of the larger size. If it can't be done, we're going to start having real serious equity concerns about having a smaller auditorium. Everybody's given me the...
Yeah. And just one thing to add, I mean, it doesn't have to be a forever decision. Either way, we could build it, engineer it so that you could add that. And if over 3 or 4 years you started putting some money in a capital reserve, it'd be about $1.5 million
I hear what you're saying.
project.
What are the? I wonder also about balconies as a concept. I remember there were some conversations when we talked about adding the Albany High balcony about need for additional supervision and that kind of thing. I just feel like a 1-story auditorium is just it's an easier thing to manage for the school. So I think even if they were cost even, I would prefer to see us look for a larger 1-story auditorium.
Yeah, if we have the room, a 1-story auditorium will definitely be less expensive than the balcony option, because, as I said, half the cost of building the balcony is building that extra lobby space up there. So we'll take a look at it and come back to you on the 14th.
So I know that puts you in a difficult position, Mr. Hogan, because you need to bring us the 5-year facilities plan. At this point, I would say we should bring the larger 5-year facilities plan, and we're going to count on Mr. Peckham and his incredibly creative team of engineers and designers to figure out a way to do this. Right?
Yeah, make lemonade.
Got it. All right. Anything else on this before next time? So next time, I guess we're going to need somebody to come back and answer that question, whether it's Mr. Peckham actually has to be physically on site or whether you'll be prepared to answer that, Bill, as part of the 5-year facilities plan, because we can't really go very far with that till we know the answer to this.
No, I'll be here.
Thank you, Mr. Peckham. Okay, Mr. Hogan.
Yes.
You get to continue.
We're going to talk about the 2019-20 budget. I'm joined by Stephanie Primero. Actually, I'll give you the computer and all our files are right there. Whoops, I don't like that. I don't know why it's giving me that look. Oh, there it is. Okay, do I have it? Okay, so here we go. This is the first full draft you're seeing, and you were also provided the line item version as well, but this is just a broad overview. Here's our agenda for this evening, the topics. We provide the mission, vision, and goals here because the budget allocation is a process of allocating your resources. It should be consistent and compatible with the district's mission, vision, and goals. So we always keep that in mind as we prepare these things. Here's our budget calendar for the next series of events. one of the next bigger events is going to be March 7th. There'll be a full release again of a complete second draft budget with the line item. We obviously will do a lot of work almost pretty much daily on this between now and then. You'll see some different cut points in the presentation of a base budget, and then we add things to it and show it again, and then add essential items and show it again. But generally, the first version of a base budget you see is going to make the assumption to continue our current programming and services, but we still need additional resources for mandates and essential items, which we will talk about. This budget, to me, in my whole career, I've been doing this a long time, but this actually makes more sense than I've ever seen in a budget. You could very clearly point to 6 or 7 items that explain the entire increase. Even though hundreds of things are going up and down, when these are all real numbers for cost drivers, the net of everything that wasn't these handful of items was only $11,000 in a $250 million budget. Amazing. So it actually, it's clean. It's very clear what's driving the budget. Primarily salaries and benefits, the debt service on capital projects, charter school tuition and anticipated increase. The community schools grant is great, but again, it's a state aid increase, but we're required to spend more money to be reimbursed like a grant. So we're thankful for it, but it does drive the budget, obviously. And transportation. The other thing I just want to know, you'll see on the line item, the salary lines can fluctuate quite a bit. They can be as high as 7, 8, even 10%. I just want to state so it's understood. In the past year, we've settled both the teacher's contract and the support contract, and both of those were retroactively, they went back to 17, 18 when base salaries started changing. So when you see 10% on a salary line increase, it doesn't mean nobody got a 10% increase. It actually, their base had to change from what it was to from 17, 18 to 18, 19, 19, 20. So there's actually 2 years, sometimes 3 years of their base salary changes. We had held some money in other parts of the budget for contingency, but it wasn't in the salary line. So the salary lines are moving, but think of it as sometimes 2 and 3 years of adjustments in their base salaries. The other thing that goes on with our salary lines is there's constant movement with grants, community schools, contract for excellence, transfers. So sometimes it could even be an additional FTE or a couple additional FTEs in that salary line if it jumped a lot. Because somebody came off a grant, we had to pick it up, et cetera. Or somebody left and someone else came in at a different salary, et cetera. So when we pretty much rolled the base budget, the first version, revenues increased 2.35%, and that really just revenue increases shown here are state aid increases that were released in the governor's budget. And it also is a line-by-line analysis by staff. We were actually able to adjust some revenue assumptions up, looking at 3-year trends and where we expected this be. So we were actually able to add quite a bit of money outside of state aid to help increase revenues this year. Expenses are looking right now at increasing 4.01%. We do anticipate getting additional state aid. We also anticipate there would be some type of tax levy increase. So we're not here yet, but these numbers will change, obviously. We expect a couple different additional revenues, state aid, and some type of tax levy change. So with this is the first snapshot you see. As it indicates below, we still need to look at the next slide, which will be mandates and then essential items and the academic plan. All of those things would further increase these numbers. Some of the mandates that are requiring additional resources are listed here. I can briefly comment, the 3 science teachers, they're all 0.4 FTEs, they're not all full-time, but those are primarily due to enrollment in 8th grade levels in science, and whenever there's science, there's labs, so kind of a double impact sometimes when it's science and a lab for the same enrollment of kids. The health teacher, that's to align with the 6th grade curriculum in the other schools at AIC. The expanded voting times, we know there's a change in law, obviously. Instead of everyone voting on one day, there will be other opportunities. We just threw 15,000 at this, which probably would give you an additional day in a couple sites, or maybe a couple days in a couple sites. We really haven't worked out a plan for this. This just happened, but I knew whatever it is we do is going to cost some more money. It's really the transport of machines and the staff to do the polls. But the good news is I don't think you're going to want to do this in 15 or 16 sites, the early voting. It seems like if we did a couple spots on different ends of the city, but we can work that out for the early voting. For the major vote, obviously, you're going to want to continue with the 15 sites or however many we use. Let's see if there's anything else I want to highlight. The registered nurse, there actually was a mandate change where our physicals are increasing by 28%. And when you do the physicals, you typically have 2 nurses there, not 1. So that's what's driving that position. And then the last 2 items, actually, the private school tuition and BOCES tuition, those are both special ed for outside placements. We've already identified, I think, 7 students. But there's some contingency in here for movement for additional outside placements. And then the last item for special ed supplies is that came off grants. In the past, they had carryover from year to year when they underspended. That has finally all been used up. We don't have that from the prior year. We can push forward, so now we have to move these to the general fund. So that's what's driving the special ed supplies number. So when we add up the mandates and roll them into the base budget, it actually goes to a 4.62% increase in expenses. If nothing else changed, that would take a 4.9% tax levy. Then the next series of items we want to look at are things we identify as essential items. These are things that are necessary to continue programming. One of the differences here, the academic plan, which we will present at another meeting, really is toward improvement and building upon things we're already doing. These essential items are really things to maintain. Many of them can be enrollment driven. So actually, all things considered, staffing coming off from grants is a total of less than 1/2 FTE. That's actually great. I mean, there's been years when this has been 15, 20. So that's kind of a small impact, which is a good thing. These other positions, a lot of these are less than 1 FTE. It indicates which schools they are. I just want to comment on, there's a 4-hour cleaner position for Delaware and Montessori. That actually will align their custodial staffing levels with other buildings. It's been identified as a need. It's 1 4-hour cleaner per school to be added. And then you will notice custodian, cleaner, actually not the maintenance worker, but you'll notice custodians and cleaners, hall monitors, and it's identified as Albany High School Addition, which we're going to be opening up in January of next year. Actually, about this time, they'll be moving in, or a couple of weeks earlier than this time. Obviously, we're going to have to staff that with custodians and security and hall monitors. The one thing that isn't tied to the addition in the middle there is a maintenance worker for the Albany High School grounds. We actually only have 2 full-time people that attempt to keep the grounds up on about 18 different sites and a lot of acres. Just the high school alone is like 28 acres. Clearly, there's a need. You have a full-time high school grounds person, and then the other 2 people could do the other several sites, which are much smaller, but there's a lot of them. So that's been identified as a clear need. The transportation field trips, we just wanted to put some money in there in recognition of when we rebid the transportation contract last time. It was a couple of years ago, but cost did go up because that previous contract had been rolled over at CPI for about 10, 12 years. And when we went to market, we knew it was going to increase significantly. It did. The field trips, their cost of transportation went up quite a bit as well. So if we put a few $100s at each school, that will kind of make them even. The second slide of essential items. I intentionally put this together. This is an O'Neill staffing package, which Ms. McKenna spoke about this evening. There is a way, one of the options tonight was a way to probably avoid most of this. And it really came down to 1.5 teams for 7th and 8th grade at O'Neill versus 2 full teams for 7th and 8th grade. And again, the class size differential for that would be 15 students average per class versus 20 students average per class. So this is a $801,000 package. Her number was slightly lower, but you may need parts of some of these FTEs. We're all in the same ballpark with the numbers. So if all of the essential items were added in with the mandates, expenses would increase 5.29%. If nothing else occurred, that would be a 6.35% tax levy. You'll notice on the bottom, we took care, number 1 was mandates are included above, essential items are included above. The last piece is additional implementation of the academic plan. They're putting that together now. We suspect there's going to be options that range from $1 million to $4.5 million, and that'll be presented shortly. Just a word on state aid. The governor's proposal provided about $1 billion of new state aid. The regents, the school boards, the business officials, and numerous lobbying groups, small cities, all called for about $2 billion of an increase. So the guess is state aid will be added somewhere between $1 and $2 billion in total package, which means they would add between 0 and another billion. My guess would be somewhere in the middle, assuming the state doesn't announce in the next few weeks they don't have any money. But no one has said that yet, so that's the good news. But it's not until March when the Assembly and the Senate start doing their own state aid budget projections. And usually that's when more money is assumed or discovered, and they can add some additional aid. So we won't back off on lobbying because there's still some more work to be done. Okay, this is just the informational. We show this, but we're anticipating 33 retirements in the district. It's about $1.2 million of reductions, but when you have to buy the retiree health plans, the net savings drops to about $731,000. So there's still a savings there. So as we move forward, the things we're still working on is the state aid. That we won't know that until late March, probably. The bond payments were more of a challenge this year. I'm still working on those, and I've actually, for the first time, actually engaged fiscal advisors who does this full-time as a profession. But with all the projects that we have in progress and things we're closing and filing with the Phase 1 high school, my concern was the state aid runs showed $3.7 million of new building aid. And that just seemed like an awfully big number, much more than I was expecting. So we are reconciling how the state came up with that number versus what we're actually doing. And it's really a question of timing on a payments assumption. So we'll be finishing that up next week. I think next time I see you, I'll have that set for these runs, I actually held about 700,000 of building aid off these assumptions because I thought it was pretty inflated. If I can add that back in, once I confirm that, my bond payments will probably go up proportionately. So we're going to end up, I think, in about the same space when we're done, but at least by having this thorough analysis done, we won't get a $1 or $2 million surprise, or it won't claim too much aid in the budget and we don't get it. Because remember, everything's a projection on those state aid runs. They showed you on the top what they think they're going to give us this year and what they think they're going to give us next year. So as we continue through the process, I know the academic team is working to, we've done a lot of work on that, but they're going to be finishing up the academic plan. There'll be new information coming out as more and more people start analyzing the governor's proposal. We're going to keep looking at the things we do in terms of reviewing our numbers. Obviously respond to your questions and any feedback from the board, the community, and staff. We'll continue lobbying and start working on the next version of the next complete second draft, which will be early March. So with that, I will turn it back to the president.
Thank you very much for your report, Mr. Hogan. Ms. Primero. As always, we will try and do one question at a time. This is a very early stage in the budget process, and it's always very hard to worry too much about it because we hope for much more money to come out of the Assembly and now the Senate. We can be optimistic because this is a rather disheartening way to start, because a 6% tax increase is a problem that is not, I don't think, something that we would generally be supportive of. So there's got to be some movement, because I know the academic plan is not even factored in here. So I would say I'm looking for nods and smiles around here. In general, we're not going to do a 6% increase, so there needs to be more money found before we can talk about adding more program. With that introduction, though, if anybody has specific things they want to ask about or talk about, Ms. Krejci.
I just had a question, and if you went over it, I apologize. I think I missed it, and it's on the essential items requiring additional resources. I just wondered about the 1.0 health teacher at Myers Albany High, because it's shaded, and I don't remember you mentioning the rationale for that one.
Yeah, actually the whole line was shaded, and then but we are actually still looking at that right now. That's one of the things I wanted to come back to, but I thought I'd put it in. I always like to make the scenario look better when I come back as opposed to worse. But we are still looking at that specific line to verify that we absolutely need it. But with some shifting and some closing of some sections at the elementary level, we may be able to, this is a district-wide position, we may be able to move, reassign some people. So we're going to see if we can take care of that without adding it.
Anyone else? Can you just talk a little bit more about the monitors, the hall monitors? You've assigned them to the Albany High addition, but I'm trying to understand if they're really related to the addition, because we are having the same number of students. They're just distributed into the building differently. So is it really about the addition, or is it really about an increase in the number in the ratio of monitors to student?
No, actually, you're correct. The students will all be about the same. The issue is, I think it's about 150,000 square feet or something, 3 floors, and you're not going to close off any of all the existing Albany High. There's still going to be kids next year moving through that building. So you're still going to need the current staff to maintain the current building and the current grounds.
So I guess I need some clarification on that, because I had assumed that when we moved 3 teams out of the existing Albany High building that we would in fact be not utilizing some of the existing space as it was getting ready to be renovated. Right? No?
I could defer to...
We're also looking at supervision in that the distribution of the students, we wouldn't be able to, because, so we wouldn't be able to pull the hall monitors from the main building because we still have students moving throughout the building, so we still need them placed where they are. we're looking at also where they're going to be in the new building. And we're also looking at how we can maximize those positions to help, especially with the coverage during cafeteria time and those non-instructional times. We need to be able to do that. One of the strategies we talked about was some of those positions might not be filled right away, so it may end up being half the cost, but we don't want to say that right away because we don't know that.
Yeah, and I just want to be clear that I'm not objecting to there being additional monitors, but when we talked to the community about the Albany High project, we said that that would, even though it would be a much larger space because the design would be more efficient and you wouldn't have all of the exciting nooks and crannies that exist in the existing Albany High, that ultimately we would need roughly the same or slightly fewer monitors. And so I'm just seeing these tagged as if they are a responsibility of the addition rather than the programmatic changes that the superintendent just talked about. That's really what I'm highlighting. It's not so much about the money spent or the monitors needed. It's about attributing the need to the renovation. I just want to make sure I understand why we really need them.
Eventually, without knowing totally, we have, I'm sure, 6 to 8 monitors at a Brook, and that whole thing will move over, and those people would come over. So basically, we have 2 additions. We're doing the music wing, the auditorium. It's coming up next in the front, in the Washington Ave side, and then this building will phase in. I'm not sure exactly when they'll start moving, when we're coming back to do the gut renovation, but we'll have to do that in sections. So I think there's going to be some transition and overlap. We know when that thing opens up. These were all actually budgeted for half salaries. That's why I put parentheses here, start 1 of 2020. These are all budgeted for 6 months at this point.
But you would anticipate that cost, double that cost, affecting the budget ongoing.
Yeah. But then I guess we're going to have to look at the whole thing. When the Brooklyn people come over, we obviously are designing the gut rehab with better sight lines. The new areas have been designed with better sight lines. We're doing a major work with all the technology. You know, the new technology would be a door goes ajar, a picture is snapped and sent right to the control room. So, and everybody knows where it is. So there's going to be a lot to come, and, you know, how much can the technology save us when everything is fully up and running.
Anyone else with specific questions for Mr. Hogan? Otherwise, we'll see you on Valentine's Day.
Okay, thank you.
If I may, President Savage?
Yes.
I just have a brief announcement. Mr. Hogan, happy birthday.
I guess I'll say thank you for the birthday dinner and executive session.
You're so welcome. Okay, that brings us to our very last, much shorter topic, which is the annual board goals. We have been trying as a team to, as we ask all of our staff members to have clearly defined goals, for ourselves. Board goals are not the same as goals for the district, so you're not going to see anything in here which pertains to student performance, for example. We all have the goal that 100% of our children will graduate and move on successfully to their next events of their life, but that's not the kind of goal you're going to see in here. These are the goals for the board in terms of how the board will behave. We establish these goals in a retreat. One of the few things that we do not in the public eye is to have a retreat about how the board behaves. Again, this is not about how the district behaves, but how the board behaves. And so these goals came out of those retreats. So we have all seen these and worked on them together, except the last one, which I ended up putting in after we talked about it in bits and pieces, but it hadn't been framed when we were all in the room together. So this is a draft for review by us and also obviously for any members of the public who want to comment on it next time. So I open it for discussion. As always, our goal here is to be the most effective board that we can be in terms of making the district the strongest district it can be. Ms. Krejci.
Just a quick comment on language, and I'm glad you said that about adding, about you fleshing out gold 4 at the end because I was like, I don't remember this. Was I fading out toward the end? But apparently not. I would just change just quickly edit that first bullet point. Instead of develop a plan to review, I would just review the manual.
I was intentionally trying to back off of that because I didn't want to commit Ms. Smith and Ms. Alexander Mann, who volunteered to do this work, to review the entire manual next year.
We don't have to update.
Dr. Tatur has also
just a point of semantics. We don't have to commit to updating the entire manual. We can just review it.
Ladies and gentlemen of the committee, this is going to become your charge. Remember that this thing has about 40 sections closely tied to individual policies that need to even reviewing it is not an inconsequential effort. But I leave it to your discretion if you want to bite it off. But I would rather have a board goal. We can. You have till 2020.
I did not volunteer for that.
No, you did not, Ms. Lang. So you do have a full calendar year, but recall during that calendar year, we will be doing many other things, including planning for a new middle school and a number of other things. This will not be the only activity we will be accomplishing. So go for it.
So I'll just say whoever volunteered should make a way because I did not volunteer to do this. I would just like to see what is presented to me. So anyway, that is my statement on that.
May I? So here's what I'd like to do. I'd like to develop a plan to, and add a second one that says review. And then we also will keep the third one. So, I mean, I know that's, what I'm trying to get at is we do need to lay out a schedule, and, decide. Go ahead.
Aim for the stars, right?
There we go.
So, Ms. Smith, if I just send you this Word document, can you craft it the way you think it should be before February 14th?
Will do.
Ms. Wilson.
Just, I feel like goal 1 and goal 3 we're already well on our way.
Ms. Lang.
I want to piggyback off of what Tabitha said and just kind of clarify. We did join the NYSBA Black Caucus for all of our members, so we are members of that caucus, and I believe the next meeting is within the 9th of February, and we have members going, and we have submitted 5 proposals to speak at.
I believe there are 6.
NYSBA. 6 proposals. And I submitted one for our government relations and what we've done for the last 3 years of our memorandum of support, our agenda, as well as where our meetings and such like that. So that was my proposal. And if anyone else wants to talk on a proposal that they submitted, please do so.
Yeah, we talked about these goals really we were scheduled to do it in December, and we ultimately did it at the beginning of January, and we acted very quickly on some of these things. I know of the 6 we submitted, in addition to that, the government affairs, we submitted one on board governance, on bringing the policy manual into shape, techniques and tips to do that. I know the superintendent has submitted one on developing an equity policy. Trying to remember what the others were. Oh, with your MPLI work, right?
We did the equity policy, we did the equity framework, we submitted one on the work with SROs. We also looked at Albany High as a school coming out of receivership and that process. Those were the 4, and then the 2, so that gives us our 6.
I will say that in one of my correspondence with NYSBA, because I've had some email challenges with them lately, they told me that they usually only accept 1 per district because they want to spread the wealth. So we'll see. Now we're in competition with each other. Anyone else on board goals? Then I would like to entertain a motion to adjourn this meeting. Dr. Tatur, seconded by Ms. Wilson. All in favor? We are adjourned.